Hi there, friends. Thanks for tuning in to HP Story. Get ready for an incredible journey as we present What If Andromeda Tonks and Alice Longbottom raised Harry, Hermione, and Neville? If you find our stories entertaining, a simple like and subscribe would mean everything to us. Your support motivates us to create more. Here we go! Chapter 1. The House of New Beginnings. November rain pelted the windows of Andromeda Tonks' cottage as she prepared a simple dinner for herself and 8-year-old Nymphadora. Ted had been gone 3 months now, murdered by snatchers while trying to help Muggle-born families escape, and the grief still felt raw enough to choke her. "Mom! I made my nose look like a duckbill again!" Nymphadora called from the living room, her voice the only bright spot in Andromeda's darkened world. A silvery flash interrupted Andromeda's reply. A ghostly rabbit burst through the kitchen wall, circling frantically before speaking in Alice Longbottom's terrified voice. "They found us, Bellatrix, help!" The message dissolved. Andromeda froze for one heartbeat. Bellatrix. Her sister. Her deranged, fanatical sister who believed Voldemort would somehow return despite the Potter child surviving. "Dora! Get to Mrs. Tonsley's next door. Now!" Andromeda grabbed her wand, scribbled an emergency note to Alastair Moody, and sent it flying with a spell. "I'll come get you soon." "But Mom, now, Nymphadora!" Seconds later, Andromeda apparat to the edge of the Longbottom property. Screams pierced the night. Alice and Frank's wards had fallen. Moody and his Aurors might not arrive in time. A decision crystallized in her mind. The sister she'd grown up with was gone, replaced by a monster who'd already taken Ted from her. She wouldn't lose Alice, too. Andromeda cast a disillusionment charm on herself and moved toward the house. Through the window, she saw 4 Death Eaters: Bellatrix, her husband Rodolphus, his brother Rabaston, and a 4th she didn't recognize. Frank lay twitching on the floor while Alice screamed under Bellatrix's cruciatus curse. Andromeda silently unlocked a side door. The baby, where was Neville? She heard faint whimpering from upstairs. Safe for now. She stepped inside. Years of growing up in House Black had taught her stealth. Her wand moved in a precise pattern as she whispered an ancient spell Ted never knew she remembered, one her father taught his daughters for necessary family business. A purple light struck Rabaston from behind. He collapsed without a sound, blood trickling from his ears. "What the?" The 4th Death Eater turned. Too late. "Stupefy!" Andromeda's spell hit him square in the chest. 2 down. Rodolphus spun toward her just as multiple cracks of apparitions sounded outside. The Aurors had arrived. "Bella! We need to go!" he shouted. Bellatrix didn't stop. Her face twisted in ecstasy as she kept her wand trained on Alice. "Tell me where he is! Where did they hide the Dark Lord?" Andromeda dropped her disillusionment. "Hello, sister." Bellatrix's eyes widened, hatred replacing shock. "Blood traitor! Better than being blood insane," Andromeda replied, her wand steady despite her racing heart. The front door exploded inward as Moody and 3 Aurors stormed in. Rodolphus grabbed Bellatrix's arm. "Now!" With a furious scream, Bellatrix fired one last curse, not at Alice, but at Andromeda. Andromeda deflected it just as the Death Eaters disapparated. "Frank!" Alice crawled toward her husband, her body shaking violently from the cruciatus aftereffects. "Frank, please!" Frank Longbottom stared blankly at the ceiling, his mouth open in a silent scream. Andromeda rushed to Alice as she collapsed. "Get healers!" she shouted at a young Auror frozen in the doorway. "And someone check on the baby upstairs." "Andy?" Alice whispered, her eyes struggling to focus. "You came." "Always," Andromeda replied, tears streaming down her face as she cradled her friend. "I'll always come." "Absolutely not." Andromeda stood in Albus Dumbledore's office 3 days later, her hands planted firmly on his desk. "I've seen those people." Petunia rejected everything magical about Lily. "They'll destroy that child." Dumbledore sighed, removing his half-moon spectacles. The blood protection won't matter if they abuse him. Andromeda cut in. And don't pretend you've checked on him properly. I went there yesterday. He's sleeping in a cupboard, Albus. A cupboard? Mrs. Tonks, while I appreciate your concern, I'm a black. Andromeda said coldly. Distant relation, but enough that the protection extends to my household. And Alice has agreed to co-parent. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. Alice Longbottom is in no condition, she's recovering. Andromeda replied. Unlike Frank. She softened slightly. The healers say I got there in time. Another few minutes under Bella's curse, and she'd have ended up like Frank. She still has tremors and nightmares, but she'll recover. And young Neville? We'll raise them together. Brothers in all but blood. As they should have been. Dumbledore steepled his fingers, considering. The Ministry won't approve easily. Which is why I've already spoken to Amelia Bones. Andromeda countered. She's seen my memories of the Dursleys' treatment. Between her influence and Augusta Longbottom's connections, we'll manage the legalities. For the first time, something like respect flickered in Dumbledore's eyes. You've thought this through. I've lost my husband. Alice has effectively lost hers. We both love those boys. And frankly, Albus, neither of us trusts your judgment right now. Andromeda straightened. So either help us or get out of our way, but Harry Potter will not spend another night in that cupboard. They're finally asleep. Alice whispered, lowering herself carefully onto the sofa beside Andromeda. The tremors in her hands were less noticeable now, 3 months after the attack, but still present when she was tired. Together again? Andromeda smiled. Neville rolled right over to Harry in his sleep. I'm thinking we should just get them a bigger bed. Alice sipped her tea, wincing slightly as a muscle spasm hit her. Any news on the custody appeal? Griselda Marchbanks joined our side yesterday. I think we've got enough Wisengamot support now. Andromeda replied. Dumbledore stopped fighting us, at least openly. He still watches the house. Let him watch. Andromeda's tone hardened. I've added every protection spell known to the Black family, plus those Ted researched. Short of the Fidelius, this place is a fortress. Alice set down her cup. Any word about her? Andromeda didn't need clarification. They haven't caught Bellatrix yet. Or the others. She hesitated. There's something else troubling me. Sirius. Black? Your cousin? He would never betray James and Lily. Andromeda insisted. Never. I knew him, Alice. Better than almost anyone except perhaps Remus and James. They say he confessed. Laughing in the street after killing all those Muggles and Peter Pettigrew. It doesn't make sense. Andromeda insisted. And they sent him straight to Azkaban. No trial. Alice's aura instincts visibly engaged. No trial at all? That's illegal. Andromeda finished. Even Death Eaters got trials. But not Sirius. I can ask some questions when I return to limited duty next month. Alice offered. A cry from upstairs interrupted them. Then another. Your turn. Alice smiled, the first genuine one Andromeda had seen in weeks. Upstairs, Andromeda found both toddlers standing in their crib. Harry had clearly woken Neville with his crying. What's wrong, little ones? She asked softly, lifting Harry first. His diaper was dry. No fever. Mama, Harry whimpered, looking around the room. Mama. Andromeda's heart broke anew. Oh, sweet boy. She sat in the rocking chair, gathering both children into her lap. Your mama loved you so much, Harry. So much. Neville patted Harry's arm clumsily. Already looking out for each other. I'm not your mama. Andromeda continued softly. And Alice isn't either. But we loved your parents, and we love you. You'll never be alone, I promise you that. Later, after they'd fallen back asleep, Andromeda found Alice staring at Frank's photograph. We're doing the right thing, Alice said without looking up. Yes, Andromeda agreed. We are. Harry, give it back. 5-year-old Neville chased Harry around the garden, their Wellington boots splashing in puddles. You gotta catch me first, Harry giggled, waving a toy wand just out of reach. Boys! 5 minutes until lunch! Andromeda called from the kitchen window. Watching them play, so carefree and normal, sometimes made her chest ache with bittersweet joy. 5 years since they'd formed this unconventional family. Against all odds, it worked. The cottage had expanded as their family had, magical additions blending seamlessly with the original structure. Alice had her own wing where she could retreat when the lingering effects of the cruciatus made her hypersensitive to noise and light. The boys shared a large bedroom filled with toys and books and a ceiling enchanted to show the stars at night. Nymphadora, now 13 and insisting on just Tonks, had her own space for Hogwarts holidays. Her metamorphomagus abilities delighted the younger boys, who constantly begged her to transform her features into various animals. They're getting so big, Alice said, joining Andromeda at the window. She'd just returned from her weekly visit with Frank at St. Mungo's. How was he today? Andromeda asked gently. Alice's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The same. The healers say they've tried a new potion regimen, but... She shrugged. I'm not giving up. Of course not. Andromeda squeezed her hand. A ministry owl swooped through the open window, dropping a letter on the counter. Another one? Alice sighed. Andromeda broke the seal. Educational Oversight Committee. They're still concerned about our unorthodox pre-Hogwarts curriculum. She snorted. As if teaching 5-year-olds basic magical theory alongside Muggle subjects is revolutionary. They're just looking for excuses to check on Harry, Alice said, pulling plates from the cabinet. Fudge is paranoid we're raising him to challenge the ministry or some nonsense. Well, they can keep sending letters, Andromeda replied, tossing it aside. Last I checked, family educational choices remain private. The boys burst through the door, muddy and breathless. Shoes off, both women said in unison. Harry grinned up at them, his green eyes bright behind small glasses Andromeda had insisted on after noticing him squinting. Unlike in another life, these were properly fitted, with frames he'd picked himself. Aunt Andy, Neville made a flower grow with NO seeds, he announced. Neville blushed. It was just a little daisy. In the middle of the stone path, Harry added. It pushed right up through the rocks. Alice beamed at her son. Really? Show me after lunch. Neville's face lit up with pride. Here, his early signs of magic were celebrated, not met with family concern about whether he might be a squib. After lunch, an unexpected knock at the door put both women on alert. Few people could even find their home without invitation, thanks to the protective charms. Andromeda drew her wand. Boys, up to your room. Alice positioned herself by the hallway, wand ready, as Andromeda approached the door. Who's there? She called. Minerva McGonagall, came the crisp reply. With a matter requiring immediate attention. Andromeda checked the security spells, confirmed it was indeed McGonagall, and opened the door. The Hogwarts professor wasn't alone. A small girl with bushy brown hair stood beside her, clutching a singed book. Behind them stood a shaken-looking Muggle couple. Mrs. Tonks, Mrs. Longbottom. McGonagall nodded. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but we have an urgent situation involving a young Muggle-born witch. May we come in? She set the entire library on fire? Andromeda whispered to Alice as they prepared tea in the kitchen, leaving McGonagall with the Grangers in the living room. Not intentionally, Alice clarified. Minerva says the girl, Hermione, was being bullied. 3 older boys cornered her in the library, tore her book, and her magic reacted. Only the books directly surrounding her burned, but it was enough to raise serious concerns. The ministry wants to obviate her until Hogwarts age. Andromeda guessed, having dealt with similar cases during her healer training. Yes, and possibly her parents too. Standard protocol for dangerous accidental magic. Alice glanced toward the living room. But Minerva thinks that would be a mistake. The girl's magic is exceptionally strong and apparently tied to her emotional state. Suppressing knowledge of it might make incidents more likely, not less. So what's she proposing? That's why they're here. Alice lowered her voice further. She wants us to mentor Hermione. Magical education starting now, not at 11. And possibly. Possibly what? Shared custody. Alice met Andromeda's eyes. The Grangers are dentists. They can't take extended leaves to manage magical incidents or supervise early training. Minerva suggested our home as a sort of magical halfway house. Hermione would split time between her parents and us. Andromeda considered this. We'd need ministry approval for early education, which Minerva thinks they'll grant, given our success with the boys and the special circumstances. The tea tray floated between them as they returned to the living room. The little girl, Hermione, sat primly between her parents, her eyes red but her posture determined. I didn't mean to do it, she said immediately. I've never done anything like that before. Just small things, books coming to me, lights turning on. Of course you didn't mean to, Andromeda said kindly, sitting across from her. Magic responds to strong emotions when you're young. It's perfectly normal. There's nothing normal about setting things on fire with your mind, Mr. Granger said, his voice strained but not unkind. For a witch, it can be, Alice replied gently. Especially one as naturally gifted as your daughter appears to be. Mrs. Granger looked at Hermione with a mixture of fear and love that Andromeda recognized all too well from her own experience with Ted's Muggle family. Professor McGonagall says you might be able to help her control it, Mrs. Granger said. But we'd have to share her with you. Not permanently, Andromeda clarified. Think of it as a specialized education program. Hermione would spend weekdays here during school terms, learning to control her magic alongside our boys. Weekends and holidays with you. As she gains control, she could spend more time at home. And this would continue until she's 11 and goes to Hogwarts? Mr. Granger asked. Yes, Alice confirmed. By then, she'd be fully prepared and much less likely to have dangerous accidental outbursts. Hermione, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Would I learn real spells? And potions? And magical history? Andromeda couldn't help smiling at the academic hunger in the girl's voice. Yes to all of that, though only age-appropriate magic with proper supervision. What about my regular school? Hermione asked. I'm top of my class in maths and English. We teach those subjects as well, Alice assured her. Both our boys follow a combined magical and Muggle curriculum. Can I meet them? Hermione asked. On cue, a small crash came from upstairs, followed by muffled giggles. Alice sighed. Harry! Neville! Come down, please, and bring whatever you broke to be repaired. Two sheepish boys appeared on the stairs, Harry carrying pieces of what had once been a model dragon. Sorry, Mum, Neville said to Alice. We were trying to make it really fly. With glitter, Harry added, as if that explained everything. Hermione stared at them with undisguised curiosity, particularly at Harry's scar. Boys, this is Hermione Granger. Andromeda introduced them. She might be staying with us sometimes to learn magic. Cool. Harry grinned, depositing the dragon pieces on a side table and approaching her. I'm Harry. This is Neville. Do you like Exploding Snap? I don't know what that is, Hermione admitted. It's a card game that blows up sometimes. Neville explained, as if this were perfectly normal. But we have regular games too if you don't like explosions. I think I'd prefer to start without explosions, Hermione said cautiously. The adults watched as Harry and Neville led Hermione to the bookshelf in the corner, already showing her their favorite magical picture books. They're so normal, Mrs. Granger whispered. When Professor McGonagall told us about magic and witches, I imagined. Pointy hats and bubbling cauldrons? Andromeda smiled. We have those too, but not as everyday wear. Mr. Granger watched his daughter laugh at a moving illustration. We'd still be her parents? Legally and in her heart? Absolutely, Alice said firmly. We'd be more like specialized tutors who provide a safe environment for her magical development. Her home would still be with you. She'd be the first Muggle-born which we've mentored, Andromeda admitted. But I was married to a Muggle-born wizard for 10 years. I understand the challenges of bridging both worlds. McGonagall, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. I would not have suggested this arrangement if I didn't believe it was in Miss Granger's best interest. Her magical potential is extraordinary, perhaps once in a generation. Without proper guidance, that power could become dangerous, to herself most of all. The Grangers exchanged a long look that contained an entire conversation. We could try it, Mrs. Granger said finally. Perhaps a trial period? 1 term, Mr. Granger added. Then we reassess. Across the room, Hermione had already commandeered a book about magical plants, and was explaining something to Neville, who listened with rapt attention. Harry had sprawled on the floor beside them, adding comments that made both laugh. Andromeda met Alice's eyes over the tea tray. Their little family was about to grow again. Higher, Dora! Higher! Harry shouted, clutching his cousin's waist as they zoomed around the garden on her broom. 15-year-old Nymphadora Tonks, home for Easter holidays from Hogwarts, grinned and pulled the broom into a steep climb that made Andromeda's heart jump. Nymphadora Black Tonks! Keep that broom under 10 feet or I swear I'll charm it to fly no higher than a garden gnome, Andromeda called. It's Tonks, Mum! Just Tonks! Her daughter shouted back, but she leveled the broom to a more reasonable height. 7-year-old Hermione watched from below, her bushy hair pulled into practical plaits. After 2 years of splitting her time between the magical household and her parents' home, she'd developed a cautious relationship with flying. You should try, Hermione, Neville encouraged, hovering a few feet off the ground on his own training broom. It's not scary once you get used to it. I prefer to keep both feet on the ground, Hermione replied primly, but her eyes tracked Harry's flight with a hint of longing. Alice emerged from the house carrying a tray of lemonade. Her bad days were less frequent now, though she still visited Frank weekly at St. Mungo's. The children knew a simplified version of what had happened to Neville's father, that bad wizards had hurt him during the war, and his mind was lost inside himself. Refreshments, Alice called. Dora, bring Harry down now. You've got revision for your OWLS to do after lunch. Ugh, don't remind me, Tonks groaned, landing with more bounce than grace. Her hair shifted from windswept blue to a dramatic morning black. Snape's going to murder me if I can't recite all 12 uses of dragon's blood by next week. I know them, Hermione piped up. I could help you study. Tonks ruffled her hair affectionately. Course you do, Minnie Ravenclaw. As they gathered around the garden table, Andromeda noticed Harry rubbing his scar. Headache again? She asked quietly. Harry nodded. It's not bad. Just itchy sometimes. These moments always unsettled her. The cursed scar that connected Harry to Voldemort was dormant, according to Dumbledore's rare check-ins, but she and Alice had researched enough dark magic to know that such connections were rarely simple. We'll put some essence of murtlap on it tonight, she promised. After lunch, while Tonks reluctantly retreated to her room to study and Alice took Neville to visit a magical plant nursery, Andromeda found Harry and Hermione huddled over books in the library. What are you two researching so intently? She asked. Hermione found something about cursed scars, Harry said. About how they can sometimes be connections. Andromeda's breath caught. She'd been careful about which books were accessible to the children, but Hermione had a knack for finding precisely what adults tried to hide. Which book is this? She asked carefully. Hermione held up. Magical Maladies and Misfortunes. A relatively benign text, but clearly effective enough. It says cursed scars can sometimes let dark wizards track people, Harry continued. Is that why we have all the protection spells? Because you know who might find me through my scar? Andromeda sat beside them. She and Alice had agreed years ago, no outright lies to the children, but age-appropriate truth. Partly, she acknowledged, Though Voldemort, yes, I use his name, fear of a name only increases fear of the thing itself, hasn't been seen since the night he gave you that scar. But some of his followers, like the ones who hurt Neville's parents, are still out there. Like your sister, Hermione said quietly. Andromeda nodded. Yes. Like Bellatrix. Will they ever come after us? Harry asked, his young face suddenly serious. They might try, Andromeda admitted. But that's why we've taught you to be careful. Why Alice and I practice defensive spells. Why we have wards and why we're careful about who knows where we live. Is that why I can't tell my school friends my real address? Hermione asked. Exactly. It's not just Harry they might target. Anyone connected to defeating Voldemort could be at risk. Harry's expression grew determined. Then I need to learn more defensive spells. If they come, I want to help protect everyone. Me too, Hermione added. I've been practicing the shield charm you showed us, and I almost got it yesterday. Andromeda felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. These children carried burdens no child should bear, yet they faced them with courage. We'll continue your lessons, she promised. Alice is particularly good at defensive magic. But remember, your job is to be children first. To learn and play and grow. Our job is to protect you. But someday we'll be grown up, Harry pointed out. And we need to be ready. Looking at his determined face, so like James in features but with Lily's expressive eyes, Andromeda knew he was right. The prophecy Dumbledore had finally shared with them hung over Harry's future like a storm cloud. Yes, she agreed softly. Someday you will. And you will be. A late-night knock startled Andromeda from her reading. Alice, who'd been dozing in the opposite armchair, was instantly alert, wand drawn. The children were asleep upstairs, Harry and Neville in their room, Hermione in the one she used during her stays. Tonks had returned to Hogwarts after Easter break. Expecting anyone? Alice whispered. Andromeda shook her head, moving silently to the security panel they'd installed beside the door. It showed a tall, shabby figure on their doorstep. Remus. She breathed in relief, lowering the wards to open the door. Remus Lupin stepped inside, looking even more worn than usual. His visits were irregular but welcome, another connection to Harry's parents, and a gentle presence the children adored. I'm sorry for the late hour, he said, his voice hoarse. Something's happened. They settled in the kitchen, well away from the children's rooms. Pettigrew's been spotted, Remus said without preamble. Alice nearly dropped her teacup. Peter? But he's dead. Sirius killed him and 12 muggles, Andromeda finished. Or so the story goes. Remus nodded grimly. A wizard in Aberdeen reported seeing a man transform from a rat into Peter Pettigrew, then back again when spotted. The Ministry dismissed it as a hallucination, but you believe it, Andromeda said. I don't know what to believe anymore. Remus looked utterly lost. If Peter's alive, then Sirius might be innocent, Alice finished. Just as you've suspected all along, Andromeda. I need to see him, Andromeda decided. I've applied for visitation rights 3 times, and been denied, Alice reminded her. Azkaban doesn't allow visitors to high-security prisoners. They'll allow me. Andromeda's voice hardened with black family resolve. One way or another. What about the children? Remus asked. If we're reopening this investigation, they're safer not knowing yet, Alice said firmly. Harry already has nightmares about Voldemort. Learning that his parents might have been betrayed by someone other than the man everyone blames? That's too much. We tell them when we have proof, Andromeda agreed. Not speculation. Remus nodded slowly. I've been tracking rumors for months. There's something else you should know. Dumbledore's bringing the Philosopher's Stone to Hogwarts next year. Nicholas Flamel's stone? Alice's aura instincts visibly engaged. Why? He believes it's at risk. That someone seeks it for. Remus hesitated. For Voldemort, Andromeda finished flatly. He thinks Voldemort is trying to return. The implication hung heavy in the kitchen. Harry would be attending Hogwarts next year. Right where Dumbledore was apparently planning to bait a trap for the darkest wizard of their time. "I don't trust that man's judgment," Andromeda said, voicing what they were all thinking. "Not with our children's safety." "Nor I," Alice agreed. "But this gives us less than 6 months to prepare them. To make sure they're ready for whatever awaits at Hogwarts." "We'll need help," Remus said. "I can assist with defense against the dark arts material. And I'll step up their practical training," Alice added. "I'll work on occlumency basics," Andromeda decided. "If Voldemort is trying to return, we can't risk him accessing Harry's mind through that scar connection." The three adults looked at each other, united in their determination to protect the children sleeping peacefully upstairs, children who would soon face challenges none of them could fully anticipate. "But I don't understand why we can't just tell the Grangers the full truth," Harry protested, helping Neville repot a bouncing bulb for Alice's garden. "Because Muggle parents don't need to know there might be a dark wizard trying to return from near death," Neville replied practically. "They'd never let Hermione come to Hogwarts." "Exactly." Hermione sighed, looking up from her book on basic defensive spells. "And I've worked too hard to miss out now." The three children had grown remarkably close over the past 4 years. Where Harry was impulsive and action-oriented, Neville provided steady, thoughtful balance. Hermione's analytical mind complemented them both, though her tendency to over-research sometimes drove the boys to distraction. "Aunt Andy says we need to be extra careful this year," Harry continued. "But she won't say exactly why." "It's obvious, isn't it?" Hermione closed her book. "Something dangerous is happening at Hogwarts, and they think it might be related to you-know-who." "Voldemort," Harry corrected automatically, having adopted Andromeda's habit of using the name. "And yeah, I think so too. I overheard Mum Alice talking to Remus about something called the Philosopher's Stone." Neville nearly dropped the bouncing bulb, which took the opportunity to attempt escape. After a brief struggle, he managed to secure it in its new pot. "The what?" he asked. "Philosopher's Stone," Hermione repeated, her eyes widening. "I've read about that. Nicholas Flamel created it. It turns metal to gold and produces the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal." "Immortal?" Harry's hand unconsciously went to his scar. "So if Voldemort got it, he could come back," Neville finished quietly. "Properly back." The greenhouse fell silent as the implications sank in. "That's why they've been training us so hard," Harry realized. "The occlumency lessons, the defensive spells, even the extra potions work. They're preparing us for whatever might happen at Hogwarts." Hermione agreed. "But why not just tell us directly?" "Because they're parents," Neville said with the wisdom of a child who'd seen too much too young. "They want us to be ready, but they don't want us to be scared." Harry stood abruptly. "Well, I'm not scared. If Voldemort is trying to come back, I want to be ready to face him." "We'll all face him," Hermione corrected firmly. "Together." Neville nodded, though his hands trembled slightly. "Together." Later that evening, as the summer twilight lingered, Alice found the three children practicing shield charms in the garden with training wands that limited spell power but taught proper technique. "Looking good," she said, watching Hermione's nearly perfect form. "But remember to rotate your wrists slightly on the final movement, Harry. It strengthens the shield's front arc." Harry adjusted his technique, and the shimmering protection became visibly more solid. "Will we be allowed to practice at Hogwarts?" Neville asked. "Outside of classes, I mean. There are supervised dueling clubs and study groups," Alice replied, demonstrating a more complex shield variation. "Though I imagine the three of you will find time for additional practice regardless." "We'll be careful," Hermione promised quickly. "No dangerous spells without supervision." Alice smiled at their transparent attempt at innocence. "I have no doubt you'll be model students in public. It's what you get up to in private that concerns us." Harry tried his most winning smile. "We'd never do anything reckless. Harry James Potter, I've been raising you since you were 15 months old." Alice laughed. That smile might work on Professor McGonagall, but not on me. From the back door, Andromeda called. Letters are here. 3 children raced inside, training wands forgotten on the garden bench. Alice picked them up, smiling sadly. Childhood was ending for their little trio. Hogwarts awaited with all its wonder and danger. Inside, Andromeda was distributing heavy parchment envelopes addressed in emerald ink. Mr. H. Potter, the Blue Bedroom, Tonks Cottage, Windermere. Mr. N. Longbottom, the Blue Bedroom, Tonks Cottage, Windermere. Miss H. Granger, the Rose Bedroom, part-time, Tonks Cottage, Windermere. They came together. Hermione beamed, already tearing into hers. Of course they did. Andromeda smiled. Minerva knows you're all here for the summer session. The kitchen erupted with excited chatter as supply lists were compared and discussed. Andromeda caught Alice's eye over the children's heads. Tomorrow they would take 3 remarkably well-prepared 11-year-olds to Diagon Alley, where Harry would face the wizarding public properly for the first time. They'd sheltered him as much as possible, but now he would step into his complicated legacy. Hogwarts awaited. And so did whatever danger Dumbledore had invited into the school. Looks like we're going shopping tomorrow, Andromeda announced. Diagon Alley awaits! As the children cheered, Alice touched her shoulder gently. They'll be okay, she murmured. We've done everything we could. I know, Andromeda replied, watching Harry excitedly explaining wizarding shops to Hermione, who was making a meticulous list despite having visited Diagon Alley before. Neville was already scanning the herbology text requirements with enthusiasm. They're not the children they would have been without us, Alice added. No, Andromeda agreed. They're better prepared. Stronger together. And loved, Alice finished. Above all, they know they're loved. Chapter 2, Lessons Beyond Textbooks. The crowd in Diagon Alley parted like the Red Sea the moment people spotted Harry's scar. It's him! Harry Potter! The boy who lived! Harry froze, his hand instinctively seeking Andromeda's. After years of relative seclusion, the sudden attention hit him like a physical blow. Eyes forward, chin up, Andromeda murmured, squeezing his hand. Remember what we practiced. Harry straightened his shoulders and gave a polite nod to the gawking shoppers. Good morning, he said clearly, his voice steady despite the slight tremor in his hand. Beside him, Neville shifted closer, a silent wall of support. On his other side, Hermione observed everything with sharp-eyed interest, cataloging reactions for later discussion. Alice moved ahead, creating a path through the thickening crowd. We've got quite a list to get through, she announced briskly. Wands first, I think. A flash exploded nearby, a wizard with a camera pushing forward. Mr. Potter. Just one photo for the Prophet. Before Andromeda could intervene, Hermione stepped directly in front of the camera. Excuse me, but we're doing our school shopping. Perhaps you could ask permission before taking pictures of minors? The photographer blinked at the bushy-haired girl blocking his shot. And who might you be? Someone who understands basic privacy laws. Hermione replied crisply. Both magical and muggle. A few onlookers chuckled. The photographer retreated, muttering about stuck-up entourages. Harry shot Hermione a grateful look as they continued toward Ollivander's. Thanks. That was brilliant, Neville added admiringly. Just wait, Alice whispered to Andromeda. This is only the beginning. Curious, very curious. Ollivander held the holly and phoenix feather wand that had finally responded to Harry, his silvery eyes fixed on the boy's scar. What's curious? Harry asked, still feeling the warm rush of magic that had surged through him when he'd found his match. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter, Ollivander said softly. The phoenix whose feather resides in your wand gave one other feather. Just one. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. A chill silence fell over the shop. Neville and Hermione exchanged alarmed glances. You mean Voldemort's wand? Harry asked directly, ignoring Ollivander's flinch at the name. Yes, the wand maker whispered. 13.5 inches. You. Andromeda stepped forward. Is there a problem with the wand itself? No, no, Ollivander assured them quickly. The wand chooses the wizard, Mrs. Tonks. That has always been clear to those of us who study wand lore. These connections are complex, but I think we can expect great things from Mr. Potter. After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great. Greatness isn't measured by destruction, Mr. Ollivander, Alice said firmly. Now, we still need wands for Neville and Hermione. Harry gripped his new wand tightly, feeling simultaneously connected to and repulsed by its link to Voldemort. Another reminder that his past was never truly behind him. Neville went next, trying several wands before a cherry and unicorn hair wand chose him. Ollivander looked pleasantly surprised. Cherry wands often show great self-control and strength of mind in their owners. He commented. Your mother's wand was willow, if I recall correctly, excellent for charm work. He has his father's wand at home, Alice said quietly. Augusta thought he should use it. Ollivander frowned. The wand chooses the wizard, Mrs. Longbottom. Using another's wand, even a parent's, rarely gives the best results. He gazed at Neville with kindness. This wand has chosen you, young man. I suspect it knows something about your potential that others might have overlooked. Neville's face brightened as he felt the cherry wand warm in his grip. For the first time, magic felt like something that belonged to him, not a legacy he had to live up to. Hermione's turn came last. After several near misses, a vinewood wand with dragon heartstring core sent a shower of golden sparks across the shop. Oh! She exclaimed, her eyes wide with delight. It feels like it's been waiting for me. Indeed, Miss Granger. Ollivander nodded. Vinewood seeks those with vision and purpose beyond the ordinary. Combined with dragon heartstring, our most powerful core, I expect you'll master spells with remarkable speed. Outside the shop, Andromeda pulled Harry aside while Alice took Neville and Hermione to purchase cauldrons. Are you all right? She asked quietly. Harry stared at his wand. Why would it choose me? A wand connected to him. Andromeda considered her answer carefully. Magic isn't simple, Harry. Connections can mean many things. Perhaps the wands are brothers because you and Voldemort represent opposite sides of power, what you choose to do with magic versus what he chose. What if I'm more like him than everyone thinks? Then you'd be proving my point about choice. Andromeda replied. Every day, with every spell, you choose how to use your power. That's what matters, not the wand's core. Harry nodded slowly. It felt right, though. When I held it. Then it is right, Andromeda said firmly. Now, shall we catch up with the others before Hermione convinces Alice to buy the entire bookshop? The whispering followed them everywhere. There he is, with the glasses. Did you see the scar? Who are those other children with him? By the time they reached Flourish and Blots, Harry's patience was wearing thin. Maybe I should just wear a sign, he muttered to Neville as a mother nearly dislocated her child's arm pointing him out. It might be less annoying, Neville agreed, thumbing through a book on rare magical plants. Hermione emerged from a towering stack of books. I've found the supplementary reading for Transfiguration, plus 3 books on magical theory that aren't on the list but looked essential. Essential, Alice smiled, taking the teetering pile from her. We'll have to expand your bookshelf again. Andromeda was across the shop, having a hushed conversation with the proprietor about special ordering some books not displayed on the main floor. Harry had learned these were usually books on more advanced magic, or historical texts the Ministry preferred weren't widely circulated. A commotion near the entrance caught their attention as a sea of redheads poured into the already crowded shop. Weasleys, Alice identified them with a smile. I worked with Arthur during the war. Good family. The youngest boy, about their age, spotted Harry and elbowed his twin brothers. Soon, the entire Ginger family was looking their way. Here we go again. Harry sighed, but to his surprise, the plump witch herding the children immediately shushed them. Stop staring this instant, she scolded. The poor boy isn't a museum exhibit. She approached Alice with a warm smile. Alice Longbottom. It's been too long. And these must be the children. Molly Weasley. Alice introduced her. Boys, Hermione, this is an old friend. Molly, you know Neville of course, and this is Harry and Hermione Granger. Lovely to meet you all properly. Mrs. Weasley beamed, though her eyes lingered on Harry's scarf for just a moment before deliberately looking away. These are some of mine. Ron's starting Hogwarts this year too. Then there's Fred and George, 3rd year, Percy's a 5th year and prefect, and my youngest, Ginny, starts next year. The youngest boy, Ron, stepped forward awkwardly. Hi. Hi, Harry replied, relieved by the normal greeting. You getting all your stuff today too? Yeah, Ron said, eyeing Harry's new robes and then glancing at his mother. Well, mostly second-hand, but books are the important part anyway. Hermione interjected, extending her hand. I'm Hermione Granger. Do you like reading? Ron looked at her hand like it might bite before shaking it. Not really. More into Quidditch. Harry perked up. You play? Aunt Andy lets us fly at home, but we don't have enough people for proper teams. You should visit sometime, Ron said, warming up. We've got a paddock near our house where we practice. Can't fly too high because of Muggle neighbors, but it's decent. The twins materialized beside their brother. Did we hear someone talking about Quidditch? Harry Potter plays, Fred. Might be competition, George. Harry grinned. Unlike most people, the twins seemed more interested in Quidditch than his scar. I'm not that good yet, he admitted. Tonks, my cousin, she's brilliant though. She's a 7th year Hufflepuff. The one who can change her appearance? Fred, or possibly George, asked. Wicked. Mrs. Weasley and Alice had moved into a detailed conversation about Hogwarts preparations, while Neville found himself explaining a rare plant book to Ginny, who listened with surprising interest. Andromeda rejoined them, several wrapped packages under her arm. Making friends already, I see. Mrs. Weasley, Alice said. You remember Andromeda Tonks? A flash of recognition crossed Molly's face. Of course. You're raising Harry with Alice, aren't you? The Prophet has been publishing all sorts of ridiculous speculations, most of which are nonsense, Andromeda confirmed. Though the children have indeed been getting a combined magical and Muggle education. And you're all starting Hogwarts together? Mrs. Weasley asked the trio. Harry nodded. We've grown up together. Well, Hermione joined us a bit later. My parents are Muggles, Hermione explained. I split my time between both homes. Mrs. Weasley looked impressed. That must give you such an interesting perspective, dear. The conversation flowed easily after that, with plans made for a potential visit to the Burrow before term began. As they finally left the bookshop laden with purchases, Harry felt lighter than he had all day. They seem nice, he commented. Normal. The Weasleys are good people, Andromeda confirmed. And they understand what it means to be viewed differently in the wizarding world. Because they're not rich? Hermione asked perceptively. Andromeda nodded. The magical world has its prejudices, just like the Muggle one. Blood status, wealth, connections, these matter to many people, however unfair that may be. Harry thought about Ron's second-hand robes and obvious discomfort. But that's stupid. What matters is who people are, not what they own. Exactly, Alice said proudly. And that's why we've raised you to see beyond surface appearances. As they passed Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor, a haughty voice called out, Well, if it isn't the blood trader and her collection of misfits. Andromeda stiffened, turning slowly to face a tall, blond man with aristocratic features and cold eyes. Beside him stood a boy about Harry's age who looked like a miniature version of his father. Lucius, Andromeda acknowledged coolly. Still hiding behind your imperious defense after all these years? Lucius Malfoy's lip curled. And you're still consorting with blood traders and mudbloods, I see. Even raising the Potter boy to follow your progressive ideals. Don't use that word, Neville said suddenly, stepping forward. The usual shyness had vanished from his face, replaced by quiet anger. Malfoy looked down his nose at Neville. Longbottom's boy, I presume? I hear your father still doesn't recognize himself in the mirror. Tragic. Alice moved so quickly her shopping bags hit the ground. Her wand pressed against Malfoy's throat before he could step back. Finish that thought, Lucius, she said softly, dangerously. Please. Give me a reason. Several passers-by froze, watching the confrontation. The blond boy looked alarmed, but a warning glance from his father kept him silent. You wouldn't, Malfoy hissed. Not here. Try me, Alice replied. I've wanted to hex you since school. This seems like the perfect opportunity. Andromeda laid a hand on Alice's arm. Not worth it, she murmured. Not with the children watching. After a tense moment, Alice lowered her wand. You're right. He's not worth it. Malfoy straightened his robes with exaggerated care. Come, Draco. We needn't waste time with this sort. As they walked away, the boy, Draco, looked back once, his expression a mixture of confusion and curiosity. Who was that awful man? Hermione asked as they gathered their scattered packages. Lucius Malfoy, Andromeda replied grimly. My brother-in-law, technically, though Narcissa and I haven't spoken in decades. He was a Death Eater, Harry said, recognizing the name from their history lessons. But he claimed Voldemort controlled him, right? Yes, Alice said bitterly. Claimed the Imperius Curse made him do it all. Bought his way to freedom while others... She trailed off, her hands trembling slightly. While others like Sirius Black went to Azkaban without even a trial. Andromeda finished. The system isn't always just children. Remember that. The mood subdued, they completed their shopping and returned home, the excitement of new school supplies temporarily overshadowed by the uglier realities of the wizarding world. Ugh, I'm never going to get this right. Neville groaned as his attempt at levitating the feather ended with it shooting across the room like a dart. You're jabbing too much, Harry pointed out, demonstrating the smooth swish and flick with his training wand. Like this. They were in the cottage's training room, a space Alice had created in the basement with cushioned walls, basic dueling platforms, and shelves of practice objects. Though they weren't allowed to use their actual Hogwarts wands outside school, the training wands Andromeda had procured worked well enough for basic form practice. Let me try again. Neville sighed, positioning his wand carefully. Hermione looked up from the advanced charms book she was studying. Try visualizing the feather floating first, then do the movement. Neville closed his eyes briefly, took a breath, then performed the charm again. This time, the feather wobbled upward a few inches before settling back down. Better, Harry encouraged. Miles better, Alice agreed, entering the training room with a tray of drinks. Your focus improved significantly. It still barely moved, Neville said dejectedly. That's because you're using a training wand with limited capabilities, Alice reminded him. With your real wand at Hogwarts, the results will be much stronger. You think so? Neville asked hopefully. I know so, Alice smiled. Your magic is strong, Neville. It just needs the right channels. Harry flopped onto one of the cushioned benches, accepting a glass of pumpkin juice. How come we can't practice with our real wands? Just once? Because the trace would register it, and we'd all get a visit from magical law enforcement. Alice explained for the dozenth time. The training wands are registered as educational devices, not full magical implements. It's a stupid rule, Harry muttered. How are we supposed to be prepared if we can't properly practice? That's why we focus on theory, form, and control now, Alice replied patiently. The power will come at Hogwarts. Besides, Hermione added, we're already ahead of most first years. The books say most students haven't done any formal wand work before school. Speaking of preparation, Alice said, Andromeda wants you all upstairs in 20 minutes. She's arranged a special lesson today. What kind of lesson? Harry asked suspiciously. Andromeda's special lessons tended to involve either uncomfortable social etiquette or obscure protective magic. The kind you'll need if you ever attend formal wizarding events, Alice said cryptically. Wear your nice robes. 40 minutes later, the children stood uncomfortably in the living room, which had been transformed. The furniture was rearranged, candles floated overhead, and the wireless played soft classical wizarding music. Andromeda entered wearing formal dress robes of midnight blue. Welcome to your introduction to wizarding social customs. We know how to be polite already. Harry objected. Basic manners, yes. Andromeda agreed. But the wizarding world, particularly the older families, operates by more complex social rules. Rules that can protect you or trap you, depending on your knowledge. She gestured to the transformed space. Today, we're simulating a formal ministry reception. Neville, as heir to the Longbottom family, would receive certain forms of address. Harry, as the last Potter, would as well. Hermione, as a Muggle-born, would be expected to navigate subtle prejudices. Why do we need to learn this? Hermione asked, already looking analytically at the setup. If it's all based on prejudice and outdated traditions? Because knowledge is power. Andromeda said simply. I rejected many pure-blood traditions when I married Ted, but I never forgot them. That knowledge protected us more than once during the war. She picked up a scroll from the side table. Today's scenario, a ministry reception celebrating a magical breakthrough. You'll encounter various guests, played by myself, Alice, and Remus, who should arrive shortly, representing different factions in Wizarding Society. Like a role-playing game? Harry suggested. Exactly. Andromeda nodded. Your objective is to navigate the event, gather information, and avoid social pitfalls. The lesson proved both challenging and enlightening. Remus arrived disguised as 3 different characters with remarkable skill: a haughty pure-blood aristocrat, a progressive ministry official, and a foreign dignitary with minimal English. Hermione excelled at information gathering but struggled with the subtle dance of pure-blood conversation where meanings layered beneath innocent words. Harry had a natural charm that worked well but became impatient with formalities. Neville, surprisingly, demonstrated an instinctive understanding of the power dynamics. Well done handling Lord Selwyn. Andromeda commented to Neville afterward, referring to Remus's portrayal of the aristocrat. How did you know to mention your grandmother's Wisengamot committee work? Neville shrugged. He kept talking about influence and tradition, so I figured he'd respect Gran's position. Exactly. Andromeda looked impressed. You recognized his values and spoke to them without compromising your own. That's advanced social maneuvering. I still don't see why I had to pretend I didn't know about magical law precedents, Hermione complained. I've read all about them. Because Lady Rosier, as portrayed by Alice, represents those who believe Muggle-borns should be deferential and unassuming. Andromeda explained. By appearing less knowledgeable, you gained information she wouldn't have shared otherwise. But that's so manipulative. Hermione frowned. It is, Andromeda agreed. Welcome to Slytherin thinking, Hermione. Sometimes appearing less threatening gets you further than displaying your full power. Harry looked thoughtful. So it's like chess. Sacrificing a pawn to capture the queen. A good analogy, Remus said, removing his disguise charms. Though remember, in real situations, the stakes are higher than a game. Will we really face people like this at Hogwarts? Neville asked. Some, yes, Alice said honestly. Children of families like the Malfoys, Parkinsons, and Knotts will have been raised with these attitudes. Others will be somewhere in the middle. A few, like the Weasleys, reject these hierarchies entirely. The point isn't to make you conform, Andromeda added, seeing their troubled expressions. It's to give you tools to navigate spaces where these rules exist, while staying true to yourselves. Later, as they changed out of their formal robes, Harry nudged Neville. You were brilliant, you know. I never would have thought to mention all those family connections. Neville blushed. Gran talks about that stuff all the time when she visits. I usually tune it out, but I guess some of it stuck. Well, it's useful, Harry admitted. I kept wanting to tell that Selwyn bloke where he could stick his blood purity comments. Which is why Aunt Andy is teaching us this, Neville replied wisely. So we don't get into trouble before we need to. Harry grinned. Oh, I still plan to get into trouble. Just on my own terms. Summer faded into autumn, bringing with it intensified preparations for Hogwarts. 3 days a week, Hermione stayed overnight for what Alice called their intensive sessions, practical magic theory, defensive techniques, and wizarding culture lessons that went far beyond what most first years would know. October brought misty mornings and a surprise visitor to the cottage. Mad Eye! Alice exclaimed, opening the door to find Alastor Moody on their doorstep, his magical eye spinning wildly. We weren't expecting you. Security check, Moody growled, stomping into the house. Dumbledore mentioned the children have been visiting Diagon Alley. Wanted to make sure your protective measures were still adequate. Harry, Neville, and Hermione watched from the staircase as the grizzled Exor inspected the house, muttering about constant vigilance and insufficient alarm charms. Who is he? Hermione whispered. Alastor Moody. Harry replied. Best aura the Ministry ever had, according to Mum Alice. He trained her. Is his eye actually magical? Neville asked, fascinated by the blue orb that seemed to look in multiple directions at once. Yes, and it can see through solid objects, Harry confirmed, including walls and the back of his own head. As if hearing them, Moody's eye swiveled upward to fix on their hiding spot. Potter! Longbottom! Granger! Get down here! Caught, they descended sheepishly to face the intimidating wizard. So, Moody barked, you're the ones Dumbledore's worried about. Let's see what you've learned. Without warning, he drew his wand. Alastor! Andromeda protested. Expelliarmus! Harry shouted automatically, his training wand producing a feeble spell that nevertheless demonstrated perfect form. Moody's bushy eyebrows rose. Disarming charm? At your age? Interesting. We've been teaching them the basics, Alice explained. For self-defense only. Show me, Moody demanded, holstering his wand. All three of you. Basic defensive postures. For the next hour, Moody drilled them relentlessly. Though their training wands produced only pale imitations of real spells, their forms and reactions impressed even the paranoid Exor. The girl has the best technique, he noted as Hermione demonstrated a perfect shield charm stance. Longbottom's got good instincts though, moved to protect the others automatically. And Potter? He studied Harry with both eyes. Quick. Very quick. When they finally broke for tea, Moody pulled Alice and Andromeda aside. You've trained them well, he acknowledged gruffly. Better than most third years I've seen. But there's talk at the Ministry. What kind of talk? Andromeda asked sharply. Questions about Potter's upbringing. Whether he's being properly prepared for his place in our world. Moody's magical eye kept watch on the children while his normal one fixed on the women. Lucius Malfoy's been making noise about appropriate guardianship in the Wisengamot. He wouldn't dare, Alice hissed. After all this time? With fudge in his pocket, he might, Moody replied. Just be prepared. Document everything, the boy's education, health, magical development. Build your case before you need it. After Moody left, Andromeda found Harry in the library, poring over a book on famous auras with Neville and Hermione. Is Mr. Moody really as paranoid as he seems? Hermione asked. He prefers cautious, Andromeda replied with a small smile. And considering how many dark wizards have tried to kill him, it's justified. Harry looked up from a page showing Moody receiving an order of Merlin. He's brilliant though. The way he showed us how to spot incoming spells by their color and movement. Will we really need to know all that at Hogwarts? Neville asked, slightly overwhelmed by the Exor's intensity. Andromeda sat beside them. Hopefully not. But as Alastor always says, constant vigilance! All three children chorused, mimicking Moody's growl. Laughing, Andromeda ruffled Harry's perpetually messy hair. Exactly. Now, who wants to help me prepare dinner? I thought we'd try that pasta recipe your parents shared, Hermione. As they headed to the kitchen, Harry hung back. Aunt Andy? I heard Mr. Moody say something about the ministry and appropriate guardianship. Are people trying to take me away from you and Mum Alice? Andromeda hesitated. They'd always been honest with the children, if age-appropriately so. Some people think they know better than we do about how to raise you, she admitted. But we won't let anyone separate us, Harry. You're ours now. Our family? Because of who I am? The boy who lived? His voice carried a bitterness unusual for his age. Partly, Andromeda acknowledged. But mostly because of politics and old grudges. The Malfoys and others like them never forgave me for rejecting their pure-blood ideology. Harry's jaw set with familiar determination. Well, they can have me. No, Andromeda agreed, pulling him into a hug. They most certainly cannot. Focus, Harry. Clear your mind. Andromeda sat across from Harry at the kitchen table, her hands lightly touching his temples. Imagine a still lake. Nothing disturbing the surface. Harry tried, but thoughts kept bubbling up, excitement about Hogwarts, curiosity about the letter Remus had brought yesterday, worry about the increased security measures around the cottage. I can't, he sighed. There's too much going on. That's precisely when occlumency is most important. Andromeda explained patiently. When your mind is busy is when it's most vulnerable. Neville and Hermione watched from the doorway. They'd all been receiving basic occlumency training for months, ever since Andromeda had insisted it was necessary protection, especially for Harry. Let me try again, Harry said, closing his eyes. This time, he visualized the small pond behind the cottage, its surface perfectly still on windless days. He imagined his thoughts as leaves falling toward it, but instead of disturbing the water, they hovered just above, never touching. Better, Andromeda murmured. Much better. Now I'm going to try a very gentle mental touch. Just a feather against your defenses. If you feel it, imagine the leaf being blown away without disturbing the water. Harry nodded, maintaining his concentration. He felt something, a slight pressure against his mental image, like a breeze threatening to push the leaf onto the water's surface. Carefully, he imagined the breeze redirecting, carrying the leaf away while the pond remained undisturbed. Good. Andromeda pulled back, looking pleased. You're developing a natural defense style. Visual redirection rather than the walls most beginners try to build. Is that unusual? Hermione asked from the doorway. It suits Harry. Andromeda explained. Occlumency techniques should match your natural thinking patterns. Harry thinks visually and instinctively. You, Hermione, organize thoughts systematically, which is why your library catalog method works for you. What about me? Neville asked curiously. You ground yourself, Andromeda said. Your mental garden with roots deep into the earth is a perfect reflection of your steady nature. Alice entered with an armful of fresh herbs from her garden. Occlumency practice going well? Harry's making real progress. Andromeda confirmed. All of them are, actually. Most adult wizards never learn these techniques. Most adult wizards didn't have Bellatrix Lestrange for a sister-in-law. Alice pointed out wryly. Or a connection to Voldemort in their forehead. Andromeda shot her a warning look, but Harry just shrugged. It's okay, he said. I know that's why we're learning this. Because of my scar. Partly, Andromeda acknowledged. But it's a valuable skill regardless. The ability to protect your thoughts and control your emotions serves everyone well. Can I ask something? Hermione ventured. If Voldemort is gone, why worry about mental protection now? Most books say legilimency is incredibly rare. The adults exchanged glances that didn't escape the perceptive children. You don't think he's really gone? Harry realized. Do you? Alice set down her herbs. We hope he is, she said carefully. But hope isn't a strategy. The fact is, no one truly understands what happened that night at Godric's Hollow. A curse that had killed countless powerful witches and wizards somehow rebounded from a baby. The war ended very suddenly, Andromeda added. Many of his followers, like the Malfoys, claimed bewitchment and walked free. If there were ever signs of his return, they'd rejoin him. Neville finished quietly. Some would, Alice agreed. Others might hesitate, having built comfortable lives in peacetime. But enough would return to pose a serious threat. Harry absently touched his scar. And you think he could use this somehow? To access my thoughts? We don't know, Andromeda admitted. Cursed scars are rare, and none documented are quite like yours. But preparing for possibilities is never wasted effort. Hermione chewed her lip thoughtfully. What about Sirius Black? If he really was Voldemort's supporter like everyone claims, wouldn't he be the biggest threat to Harry? A tense silence fell. They'd never hidden Sirius's supposed betrayal from Harry, but neither had they emphasized it. That situation is complicated, Andromeda said finally. There are aspects of Sirius's case that have never made sense to me. Like what? Harry asked, suddenly alert. Andromeda and Alice exchanged another look before Alice nodded slightly. Like the fact that he never received a trial, Andromeda explained. Or that the timing of events that night doesn't add up when you examine Ministry reports closely. You think he might be innocent? Harry's voice contained an odd mixture of hope and dread. I don't know, Andromeda admitted. But I've never believed he betrayed your parents. Sirius loved James like a brother. More than his blood family, certainly. He was your cousin, Neville recalled from previous conversations. My favorite cousin, Andromeda confirmed. We were both black sheep of the Black family. When I ran away to marry Ted, Sirius was the only relative who supported me. So why is he in Azkaban? Hermione asked, her logical mind seeking clarity. Because he was found at the scene where Peter Pettigrew and 12 Muggles died, Alice explained. Witnesses claim he was laughing maniacally, saying it was all his fault. Laughing doesn't mean guilt, Harry pointed out. No, Andromeda agreed softly. Sometimes it means hysteria or shock. But in the chaos after your parents' deaths, few were asking nuanced questions. Could we help him? Harry asked suddenly. If he's innocent? Alice sighed. We've been trying for years, Harry. Requesting trial records that don't exist. Petitioning for visitation that's denied. The system is designed to forget those in Azkaban, not re-examine their cases. But we haven't given up, Andromeda assured him. Remus has been helping us gather evidence. If Sirius is innocent, we'll prove it somehow. Harry nodded, a new determination in his eyes. I want to help too. Your help right now, Alice said gently, is to prepare for Hogwarts and stay safe. The more we understand about what happened that night, the better chance we have of protecting you, and potentially clearing Sirius's name. Later, after the children had gone to bed, Alice found Andromeda in the study, reviewing old Prophet articles about Sirius's capture. We should have waited to tell him, Alice said, sitting beside her. He deserved to know. Andromeda replied, not looking up from the newspapers. Besides, they're getting too clever at overhearing things they shouldn't. True, Alice smiled. Sometimes I forget they're only 10. They ask such adult questions. They've had to grow up faster than most. Andromeda said, finally setting aside the yellowed papers. Especially Harry. Do you ever wonder if we've pushed them too hard? All the extra lessons, the defensive training, the political awareness. Every day, Andromeda admitted. But then I remember what's at stake. What nearly happened to you and Frank. What did happen to Lily and James? She closed her eyes briefly. The world hasn't gotten safer, Alice. It's just gotten better at pretending the danger is gone. And you still believe it centers around Harry? I believe Dumbledore is keeping secrets from us, Andromeda said carefully. Why else insist on Harry's centrality to everything? Why the constant checks on his development? Why bring the Philosopher's Stone to Hogwarts the very year Harry arrives? Alice nodded slowly. Too many coincidences. And I don't believe in coincidences, Andromeda finished. Which means we keep preparing them as best we can, and hope it's enough. Expelliarmus! Harry called, his training wand producing a wisp of red light that nevertheless connected with Neville's wand, tugging it gently from his grasp. Well done, Harry! Alice praised from the side of the training room. Neville, remember to maintain your grip while casting. Split focus. Neville nodded, retrieving his wand. Can I try the impediment jinx this time? Positioning first. Alice reminded him. The spell works best when you. A silver lynx burst through the wall, startling them all. It spoke with Kingsley Shacklebolt's deep voice. Alice, security breach at St. Mungo's. Frank's ward. Come immediately. Andromeda already notified. The Patronus dissolved. Alice went pale. Stay here, she ordered the children, already moving toward the stairs. Lock down after me? But Mom, Neville started. Stay here, Alice repeated, her aura training visibly taking over. Defensive positions if anyone but me or Andromeda returns. Harry knows the emergency portkey procedure. She was gone seconds later, the house's protective ward sealing behind her. The three children exchanged alarmed looks. What do you think happened? Hermione asked, clutching her training wand despite its limited utility. Someone tried to get to Dad, Neville said, his voice tight. The Death Eaters who escaped maybe. Harry moved to the security panel Moody had insisted they install. The wards are holding. No one can operate in. Should we contact someone? Hermione suggested. Professor McGonagall or Remus? The emergency system should have alerted them automatically. Harry replied, remembering the drills they practiced. We need to stay put and stay ready. Neville paced anxiously. What if something happened to Dad? Or Mum while she's there? Harry gripped his shoulder. Alice, your mom, is one of the best aurists ever. Even after everything, she's still brilliant. And Aunt Andy is with her. They'll be okay. The hour that followed was the longest of their young lives. They remained in the training room, wands at the ready, jumping at every creak of the old cottage. When the security chime finally announced a returning resident, they held their breath until Alice's voice called down. It's safe. Come upstairs. They found Alice and Andromeda in the kitchen, Alice looking shaken while Andromeda brewed tea with an extra measure of calming herbs. What happened? Neville asked immediately. Is Dad okay? Alice pulled him into a tight hug. Your father is fine, love. They didn't get to him. Who didn't? Harry asked. We're not certain, Andromeda replied, pouring steaming tea into mugs. Someone disguised as a healer tried to access the long-term care ward. When questioned, they attacked an orderly and fled. Was it her? Neville couldn't bring himself to say Bellatrix's name. No, Alice assured him quickly. The witness description doesn't match. A man, average height, nothing distinctive except... She hesitated. Except what? Hermione pressed. When cornered, he allegedly shouted about the Dark Lord's return before disapparating. Andromeda finished. A chill silence fell over the kitchen. But Voldemort is gone, Harry said finally. Isn't he? Most believe so, Andromeda said carefully. But as we've discussed, there are those who think otherwise. Why target Dad, though? Neville asked, his voice small. He's already hurt. Alice squeezed him tighter. We don't know, sweetheart. It might have been random, or they were looking for information. Andromeda completed when Alice faltered. During the war, your parents were key order members. They might have known things others didn't. Things about Voldemort's fall? Harry asked shrewdly. Possibly, Alice admitted. Frank and I were investigating several leads before we were attacked. What kind of leads? Hermione asked. Alice and Andromeda exchanged looks. That's enough for tonight, Andromeda said firmly. The important thing is everyone is safe, and security at St. Mungo's has been increased. But, Harry began. No buts, Alice said, recovering her composure. This incident is precisely why we've been training you, but it's also why we maintain certain boundaries. You're still children, however clever and capable you might be. Later that night, Harry found Neville sitting alone in their room, staring at a photograph of his parents on their wedding day. "You okay?" Harry asked quietly. Neville shook his head. "I keep thinking, what if they'd gotten to him? What if they hurt him more somehow?" Harry sat beside him on the bed. "I know." "No, you don't," Neville said, not unkindly. "Your parents are gone. It's awful, but it's finished. Mine are half here, half gone. Dad doesn't even know who I am when I visit. Mum pretends he's getting better, but he's not." "You're right," Harry acknowledged. "I don't know how that feels." They sat in silence for a moment. "But I do know what it's like to wonder," Harry continued finally. "To wonder if things could change. If Sirius is innocent, if Voldemort might come back, if my parents somehow knew something that could help us now." "That's different," Neville argued. "Is it? We're both living with what-ifs, Nevada. The difference is you've got the courage to face yours every time you visit your dad, knowing he might never recognize you. I'm not sure I could do that." Neville looked surprised. "Course you could. You're Harry Potter. You face everything head-on." Harry laughed softly. "Only because you and Hermione are usually right beside me." He nodded at the photograph. "Your dad was brave. Your mum still is. That's where you get it from." "I don't feel brave most of the time." "Nobody does," Harry said with the simple wisdom of a child who'd had to grow up too quickly. "Aunt Andy says that's what courage is, being scared but doing it anyway." Neville carefully returned the photo to his nightstand. "If Voldemort is trying to come back somehow, we'll stop him, right? Together?" "Together," Harry agreed firmly. "All of us. He won't hurt anyone else's parents if we can help it." Spring brought warmer weather and increased anxiety as Hogwarts drew nearer. The security breach at St. Mungo's had proven to be an isolated incident, but it had intensified their training schedule. No, Alice corrected, adjusting Hermione's stance. "If you're casting while moving, your weight needs to be balanced differently. Like this." She demonstrated a fluid sidestep while maintaining her casting position. "Stationary dueling is a luxury you may not always have." The three children practiced the movement, Harry picking it up most naturally while Hermione struggled to coordinate her steps with her wand work. "I feel ridiculous," she complained after stumbling again. "You won't when it saves your life," Alice replied matter-of-factly. Again. After an exhausting hour of mobility drills, Alice finally called a break. "You're all improving. Harry, your instincts are excellent. Neville, your defensive shields are getting stronger. Hermione, your precision is unmatched once you get comfortable with the movement. Will we really need all this at Hogwarts?" Hermione asked, wiping sweat from her forehead. "The books say it's the safest place in Britain." "It should be," Alice agreed. "But should isn't the same as is. And skills learned now will serve you throughout your lives. Besides," Harry added with a grin, "we'll ace defense against the dark arts." Upstairs, they found Andromeda in intense conversation with Remus, both looking grim. "What's happened?" Alice asked immediately. Remus ran a hand through his graying hair. "Gringotts break-in. Someone tried to steal from a high-security vault that had been emptied earlier that day." "Which vault?" Andromeda asked sharply. 713, Remus replied. "The same vault Hagrid visited on Dumbledore's orders the day he took Harry shopping in the alternate timeline that never happened." "The stone?" Alice breathed. "It must have been." "What stone?" Harry interrupted, reminding the adults of their presence. Andromeda sighed. "Sit down, all of you. I suppose you should know, since you'll be at Hogwarts soon enough." Once they were settled, Remus explained about the Philosopher's Stone, its powers, its creator Nicholas Flamel, and Dumbledore's decision to move it to Hogwarts for safekeeping. "But why would anyone steal it?" Neville asked. "Immortality. Unlimited gold. Take your pick," Remus replied. "But the timing is concerning, especially after the St. Mungo's incident." "You think they're connected?" Hermione stated rather than asked. "We think it's unwise to dismiss the possibility," Andromeda corrected. Especially with rumors of strange happenings in Albania, where Voldemort was last rumored to be. Is the stone at Hogwarts now? Harry asked. We believe so, Alice confirmed. Which means you three need to be especially vigilant this year. You want us to help protect it? Harry looked excited at the prospect. Absolutely not, Andromeda said firmly. We want you to stay far away from whatever protections Dumbledore has established. This is precisely the sort of situation our training is meant to help you avoid, not seek out. But if Voldemort, Harry began, is a problem for qualified adults, Alice interrupted. Your job at Hogwarts is to learn, make friends, and stay safe. In that order. The children exchanged glances that the adults recognized all too well. I mean it, Andromeda insisted. Promise me you won't go looking for the stone or whatever protections surround it. We promise. They chorused, a little too readily. Remus hid a smile. Perhaps a more specific promise? Not to seek out the stone unless directly threatened? After some negotiation, a compromise was reached. They would not actively investigate the stone unless they had clear evidence of imminent danger that adults were ignoring. I still don't understand why Dumbledore would bring something so valuable to a school full of children, Hermione said as they headed outside afterward. It's obvious, isn't it? Harry replied. It's because of me. Don't be conceited, Hermione scoffed. I'm not, Harry insisted. Think about it, the stone moves to Hogwarts the exact year I start. After being perfectly safe with Flamel for centuries. He's got a point, Neville admitted. Aunt Andy and Mum have said before that Dumbledore seems to arrange things around Harry. But why? Hermione pressed. What would be the purpose? Harry shrugged. Maybe he thinks Voldemort will come after me again, and wants to be prepared. Or maybe. His voice trailed off. Maybe what? Neville prompted. Maybe he wants to see what I'll do. Harry finished quietly. A test, sort of. That's ridiculous, Hermione declared. No responsible headmaster would endanger students that way. But her voice lacked conviction, and the three friends fell silent, each contemplating the approaching school year with mixed excitement and apprehension. The last weeks of summer brought a flurry of final preparations. Trunks were packed and repacked, spellbooks read and reread, and last-minute shopping trips made for forgotten items. I can't believe we're really going, Neville said as they sat in the garden on their last night at home. Tomorrow they'd board the Hogwarts Express, beginning the next chapter of their lives. It won't be that different, Harry pointed out. We'll still see Aunt Andy and your mum during holidays. But we'll be in different houses maybe, Neville worried. What if I'm not in the same house as you two? Then we'll still be friends, Hermione said firmly. Houses are just living arrangements, not personality prisons. Easy for you to say, Neville muttered. You're definitely Ravenclaw material. Harry's a Gryffindor for sure. Me? I'll probably end up in Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff is a brilliant house, Harry objected. Tonks was Hufflepuff, remember? And she's the coolest witch we know. Besides, Hermione added, the Sorting Hat takes your preferences into account, according to Hogwarts, a history. This was news to both boys. Really? Harry asked. You can choose? Not exactly choose, Hermione clarified. But influence. The hat considers where you want to be. Harry looked thoughtful. So we could potentially all be in the same house if we wanted badly enough? Possibly. Hermione hedged. Though the hat might still override you if you're particularly suited elsewhere. Where do you want to be sorted? Neville asked her. Hermione bit her lip. I thought Ravenclaw initially, but I'm not sure anymore. Gryffindor values courage and determination, which seem increasingly important. Especially with everything we've learned about, Voldemort. Harry supplied. You can say his name, Hermione. And Andy's right. Fear of the name just makes fear of the thing worse. Sorry, habit. Hermione sighed. My point is, maybe being brave is more important than being clever right now. Harry nodded slowly. I've been thinking similar things. Everyone expects me to be in Gryffindor like my parents, but... But what? Neville prompted when he trailed off. But sometimes I wonder if that's the right fit, Harry admitted. I mean, I want to be brave like them, but I'm also cunning, Hermione supplied. Strategic. Slytherin traits, Neville realized. You're wondering about Slytherin? Harry shrugged uncomfortably. Aunt Andy was Slytherin, and she's brilliant. She always says ambition and cunning aren't inherently bad, it's how you use them. But everyone would expect the boy who lived to be in Gryffindor, Hermione pointed out. The optics alone, I know, Harry sighed. That's why I probably won't ask for Slytherin. But it feels wrong to choose based on what everyone else expects. What about you, Neville? Hermione asked. If you could pick? Neville plucked at the grass beside him. I'd want to be with you too, honestly. But if I had to pick for myself, maybe Gryffindor. To make my parents proud. Your mum would be proud of you no matter what, Harry said firmly. I know. Neville smiled faintly. But Dad, in his moments of clarity, he sometimes asks if I'm showing Gryffindor spirit. It's one of the few things he seems to remember. A comfortable silence fell as twilight deepened into dusk. Tomorrow would bring change, challenges, and the beginning of their greatest adventure yet. We stick together, Harry said finally. No matter what houses we end up in. Deal? Deal. Neville and Hermione chorused. From the cottage window, Andromeda and Alice watched the three children, their silhouettes outlined against the setting sun. They'll be all right, won't they? Alice asked softly. They'll be better than all right. Andromeda replied with fierce certainty. They'll be extraordinary. Alice smiled, though worry still creased her brow. We've done everything we could to prepare them. Yes, Andromeda agreed, watching as Harry threw his arm around Neville's shoulders while Hermione gestured animatedly about something. And now we have to trust them to prepare for whatever comes next, together. Chapter 3. The Hogwarts Letters and Beyond. Platform 9 3/4 buzzed with the chaos of hundreds of families saying goodbyes. Steam billowed from the Scarlet Hogwarts Express as trunks thumped, owls hooted, and parents delivered last-minute advice. Remember to write after the sorting, Andromeda said, straightening Harry's collar for the third time. And don't forget the communication journals we packed. We know, Aunt Andy, Harry replied, trying not to roll his eyes. Two-way journals, write in them every other day, emergency use only if needed. And the protective amulets stay under your clothes, Alice added, tucking Neville's beneath his shirt. They're not decorative jewelry. Hermione's parents stood slightly apart, looking simultaneously amazed and overwhelmed by the magical platform. Despite years of exposure to the wizarding world through their daughter's education, the Grangers still found each new magical experience disorienting. You'll look after her? Mrs. Granger asked Alice and Andromeda. As if she were our own, Andromeda assured her. Though I suspect she'll be looking after the boys more often than not. The warning whistle blew, sending parents into final hugs and hurried goodbyes. Remember what we practiced, Alice whispered, embracing Harry and Neville together. Trust your instincts, but verify your facts. And don't go looking for trouble, Andromeda added, though her smile suggested she knew exactly how likely that advice was to be followed. Minutes later, the trio leaned out an open window, waving until their families disappeared from view as the train rounded a bend. They settled into a compartment, suddenly quiet as the reality of their departure sank in. We're finally going, Neville said, breaking the silence. Actually going to Hogwarts. It feels strange, Harry admitted. Good, but strange. Did you notice how people were staring at you on the platform? Hermione asked. It's going to be like Diagon Alley all over again, Harry groaned. Don't remind me. The compartment door slid open, revealing the youngest Weasley boy from the bookshop encounter. Mind if I join you? Everywhere else is full. Sure, Harry said, gesturing to the empty seat. Ron, right? Yeah, Ron nodded, settling opposite them. His eyes flicked briefly to Harry's scar before he seemed to remember his mother's admonishment not to stare. Good to see you all again." The awkwardness dissolved as Ron launched into an animated description of his brother's contradictory advice about Hogwarts. Soon they were all laughing, sharing stories and snacks from the trolley. "So what house do you want?" Ron asked through a mouthful of chocolate frog. "Gryffindor, I hope. My whole family's been there." "We've been discussing that," Hermione said carefully. "There are merits to each house." Ron looked baffled. "But Slytherin's full of dark wizards." "Everyone knows that." "My guardian was Slytherin," Harry replied evenly. "And she's one of the best people I know." "Oh," Ron faltered. "Sorry, didn't mean, it's just what people say, you know." Hermione changed the subject tactfully. "Have you tried any spells yet?" "We've been practicing forms, but we couldn't use our actual wands until now. My brothers taught me one." Ron brightened, pulling out a battered wand. "Supposed to turn my rat yellow." He gestured to the sleeping rat in his pocket. Before he could demonstrate, their compartment doors slid open again. A pale boy with platinum blonde hair stood framed in the entrance, flanked by two larger boys. "They're saying Harry Potter's in this compartment," he drawled. "So it's you, is it?" Harry recognized Draco Malfoy from their Diagon Alley encounter. "Yes," he replied neutrally. "And you're Draco Malfoy?" Malfoy looked surprised that Harry knew his name, but quickly recovered. "This is Crabbe and Goyle," he said, nodding to his companions. "You'll find some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. I can help you there." He extended his hand, but Harry didn't take it. "I think I can figure out the right sort for myself, thanks," Harry said coolly. Malfoy's pale cheeks flushed pink. "Careful, Potter. Without the right friends, you might go the same way as your parents." His eyes swept over the others dismissively. "Hanging around with Weasleys, Longbottoms, and—" He sniffed in Hermione's direction. "Whatever she is." Neville stood suddenly, his usual shyness nowhere in evidence. "I think you should leave." Malfoy laughed. "Going to fight us, are you, Longbottom?" "We don't need to fight," Harry said, also rising. "But we know more defensive spells than you might expect. Want to test that theory?" Something in Harry's calm confidence made Malfoy hesitate. "Come on," he muttered to Crabbe and Goyle. "We'll see how brave they are after sorting." After they left, Ron stared at Harry and Neville with newfound respect. "That was brilliant. Would you really have hexed them?" "Only if necessary." Harry shrugged. "But Aunt Andy says sometimes confidence alone can defuse a situation." "Who taught you defensive spells?" Ron asked eagerly. "My dad works at the ministry, and he says underage magic. We couldn't use our actual wands," Hermione explained. "But Alice, Neville's mum, was an Auror. She taught us forms and theory with training wands." "Wicked," Ron breathed. "Can you teach me some?" As the train journey continued, Harry found himself warming to Ron's straightforward enthusiasm. Unlike most people, Ron quickly seemed to forget he was talking to Harry Potter, and just treated him as another first year. The countryside outside grew wilder as they traveled north. Eventually, a voice announced their imminent arrival at Hogsmeade Station. "This is it," Hermione said, suddenly nervous as they changed into their school robes. "Everything we've prepared for." Harry squeezed her hand. "Together, remember?" "Together," Neville affirmed. They disembarked into the cool night air, where a booming voice called, "Fur's years! Fur's years over here!" Hagrid, the enormous groundskeeper, led them to a fleet of small boats on the dark lake. As they rounded a bend, Hogwarts Castle came into view, its windows blazing with golden light against the starry sky. "Wow!" breathed Neville. Harry couldn't have said it better himself. The great hall exceeded even their expectations. Thousands of candles floated beneath an enchanted ceiling that perfectly reflected the night sky outside. For long tables stretched beneath banners representing each house, while the staff table overlooked everything from the far end. Professor McGonagall placed a patched, frayed wizard's hat on a stool before the assembled first years. To the trio's amusement, the hat began to sing about the four houses and their qualities. When the sorting began, Harry felt his stomach knot with tension. Their discussions in the garden suddenly seemed far more consequential as real students took their places beneath the ancient hat. Granger, Hermione! Hermione squeezed both boys' hands before hurrying forward. The hat dropped over her eyes, hiding her expression. 1 minute passed. Then another. A hat stall, someone whispered nearby. Finally, after nearly 4 minutes, Gryffindor! The red and gold table erupted in cheers as Hermione removed the hat, looking both pleased and surprised. She flashed Harry and Neville a significant look as she passed. Soon after, Longbottom, Neville! Neville approached the stool with determined steps, nothing like the hesitant boy he might have been in another life. The hat deliberated for only a moment before declaring, Gryffindor. The surprise on Neville's face gave way to a brilliant smile as he joined Hermione, who was clapping wildly. More names passed until finally, Potter, Harry. The hall fell silent, then erupted in whispers as Harry walked forward. He caught a glimpse of Dumbledore watching intently before the hat dropped over his eyes. Said a small voice in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and a nice thirst to prove yourself. But where to put you? Harry gripped the stool, thinking of his conversations with Neville and Hermione. Of his parents, who had been Gryffindors. Of Andromeda, who embodied the best of Slytherin. You could be great, you know. The hat continued. It's all here in your head, and Slytherin would help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. Harry took a deep breath. I want to be with my friends, he thought clearly. But I also want to be where I truly belong. Where you truly belong, eh? The hat seemed amused. Well, in that case, Gryffindor! The Gryffindor table exploded with celebration. The Weasley twins chanted, We got Potter! We got Potter! As Harry made his way to sit between Neville and Hermione. We did it! Hermione whispered, squeezing his arm. All together! What took so long? Neville asked as Thomas Dean was called forward. The hat considered Slytherin, Harry admitted quietly. But in the end, I think it saw something else. After the sorting concluded with Zabini Blaze joining Slytherin, Dumbledore rose to deliver the strangest welcome speech Harry had ever heard, culminating in a warning about a very painful death awaiting anyone who ventured into the forbidden third-floor corridor. He's not serious, is he? Neville whispered. Must be, said an older redhead Harry recognized as Percy Weasley. Strange, though. Usually, he gives reasons for rules. Harry, Neville, and Hermione exchanged knowing glances. The Philosopher's Stone had found its new home. As magnificent food appeared on the golden plates before them, Harry caught Professor Dumbledore watching him with particular interest. Beside Dumbledore sat a nervous-looking man in a purple turban, and next to him, a hook-nosed professor with greasy black hair. Who's the professor next to the one in the turban? Harry asked Percy. That's Professor Snape, head of Slytherin House. Teaches potions, but everyone knows he wants the defense job. Best not get on his wrong side. As if hearing his name, Snape looked directly at Harry. A sharp, hot pain shot across Harry's scar, making him wince. You okay? Neville asked immediately. Yeah, Harry muttered, rubbing his forehead. Just a headache. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, something Andromeda would want to know about immediately. After the feast, Percy led the Gryffindor first years through the castle's labyrinthine corridors to Gryffindor Tower, where the fat lady's portrait swung open at the password, Caput Draconis. The common room was a cozy circular space filled with squashy armchairs, tables, and a crackling fire. Percy directed the girls through one door and the boys through another, leading to their respective dormitories. In the first-year boys' dormitory, Harry found his trunk already placed at the foot of a four-poster bed hung with deep red velvet curtains. Neville claimed the bed beside his, while Ron took the one opposite. Their other roommates, Seamus Finnegan and Dean Thomas, were already excitedly comparing Hogwarts to their expectations. "Can't believe we all made Gryffindor," Neville said quietly as they unpacked essentials. "What were the odds?" "The hats seemed to listen to what I wanted," Harry replied. "Maybe for you and Hermione too." "It did consider Hufflepuff," Neville admitted. "Said I had loyalty in spades. But then it mentioned courage being there too, just needing the right circumstances." Harry nodded. "Mine talked about Slytherin qualities, but I think our upbringing made a difference. Aunt Andy and your mum encouraged us to be brave and cunning and loyal, all of it." Before they could discuss further, Ron flopped onto his bed. "Mental, this place is. Did you see those moving staircases? And the ghosts? Charlie told me about them, but seeing them float through walls." The excited chatter continued until Percy poked his head in to order lights out. Harry drew his curtains partly closed, but instead of sleeping, he pulled out the enchanted journal Andromeda had given him. Writing with his wand tip illuminating the page, he recorded the day's events, emphasizing the pain in his scar when Snape looked at him and the warning about the third-floor corridor. The words faded into the page, to be transferred to Andromeda's matching journal. Within minutes, new writing appeared, concerning about your scar. Monitor and record any recurrences, when, where, who's present. Third-floor warning confirms our suspicions about Stone's location. Exercise extreme caution. Normal exploring fine, but avoid that corridor. More tomorrow. Sleep well. Love, A. Harry closed the journal, tucking it beneath his pillow. Despite Andromeda's warning, he couldn't help feeling intensely curious about what lay behind the forbidden door. If the stone was there, and if Voldemort, or someone working for him, wanted it. He fell asleep planning routes to explore the castle with Neville and Hermione, the forbidden corridor mysteriously absent from his mental map. The first week of classes proved both familiar and surprising. Years of preparation had given the trio a solid foundation in magical theory, but practical application with real wands brought new challenges. In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall watched with barely concealed surprise as Hermione transformed her match into a needle on the second attempt, followed by Harry on the third. Neville took several more tries but succeeded before class ended, making them the only students to complete the transformation. "Excellent work," McGonagall said, examining their needles. 5 points each to Gryffindor. "May I ask who provided your previous instruction?" "My guardian, Andromeda Tonks, and Neville's mother, Alice Longbottom," Harry replied. "They thought we should understand the theory before coming to Hogwarts." McGonagall's expression softened at Alice's name. "I see. Well, their teaching methods were clearly effective. Perhaps you might assist your classmates next lesson." Charms followed a similar pattern, with Professor Flitwick squeaking in delight when all three mastered the levitation charm within the first 15 minutes of practice. "My goodness!" he exclaimed after Hermione flawlessly levitated 3 feathers simultaneously. "Such control already! Most unusual in first years." But their early success created an unexpected problem: resentment from some classmates. "Show-offs," Seamus muttered when Harry helped Ron correct his wand work. "Bet they think they're special because they had private tutors." "Don't be a prat," Ron defended them. "They're helping us, aren't they? Besides, Harry's all right, normal, you know. Not stuck up like you'd expect." "Like you'd expect?" Harry repeated quietly when Ron went to retrieve another feather. Hermione patted his arm. "He means well. He's just not great with words." "I know," Harry sighed. "I just wish people would see me as just Harry, not some special case." Herbology provided Neville his moment to shine. Professor Sprout beamed as he correctly identified rare specimens and demonstrated perfect handling techniques for temperamental plants. "Your mother mentioned your green thumb in her last letter," Sprout told him warmly. "She said you've been nurturing a Mimbulus Mimbletonia cutting?" Neville nodded eagerly. "I've got it in our dormitory with a specialized humidity charm." "Remarkable," Sprout said. Most adult wizards can't keep those alive. 10 points to Gryffindor for exceptional botanical knowledge. History of magic proved as dull as Andromeda had warned, a ghost professor droning endlessly about goblin rebellions. Even Hermione struggled to maintain focus. We could self-study from the book, she whispered to Harry and Neville, and use class time to read about more recent history. Like what happened after Voldemort fell, Harry suggested. The public records Aunt Andy couldn't access? Hermione nodded. Hogwarts library might have information the Ministry restricts elsewhere. Defense against the dark arts proved massively disappointing. Professor Quirrell stammered through basic material they'd mastered years ago, his classroom reeking of garlic supposedly to ward off a vampire he'd encountered in Romania. This is ridiculous, Harry muttered after a particularly useless lesson on basic defensive theory that contradicted everything Alice had taught them. We're learning nothing. Worse than nothing, Neville agreed. Some of what he's saying about shield deployment is dangerously wrong. Hermione bit her lip. Maybe we could form a study group? Practice what we already know and research more advanced material? Brilliant idea, Harry agreed. We could invite Ron and maybe some others. Let's meet in the library tonight to plan, Hermione suggested. After dinner. But the class they all approached with the most trepidation was potions, scheduled for Friday morning with the Slytherins. Andromeda had warned them about Severus Snape's reputation, brilliant but harsh, especially toward Gryffindors. He and your father had a rivalry at school, she told Harry during their preparations. Childish stuff that unfortunately never fully resolved. He might transfer some of that animosity to you. That's not fair, Harry had protested. No, Andromeda had agreed. But it's human. Just be prepared, be respectful, and above all, know your material. They had taken her warning seriously, reading ahead and memorizing basic ingredients and their properties. But nothing quite prepared them for Snape himself. The potions master swept into the dungeon classroom like a bat, his black robes billowing behind him. He began with roll call, pausing at Harry's name. Ah, yes, he said softly. Harry Potter. Our new celebrity. Malfoy and his friends sniggered behind their hands. Snape finished calling names, then fixed the class with his cold, empty eyes. You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making, he began in barely more than a whisper. The class hung on his every word as he described bottling fame and brewing glory. Then, suddenly, Potter! What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Hermione's hand shot into the air, but Harry met Snape's gaze steadily. The draught of living death, sir. A powerful sleeping potion. Surprise flickered briefly across Snape's face before his lip curled. Lucky guess. Where would you look if I told you to find a bezoar? In the stomach of a goat, sir, Harry replied. It's a stone that can save you from most poisons. Snape's eyes narrowed. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? They're the same plant, sir. Also called aconite. A tense silence followed as student and teacher stared at each other. Finally, Snape spoke to the class at large. Well? Why aren't you all copying that down? There was a sudden rummaging for quills and parchment. Over the noise, Snape added. And a point to Gryffindor for adequate preparation, Potter. The backhanded compliment was the closest thing to praise Snape seemed capable of giving a Gryffindor, especially one named Potter. Throughout the practical portion of brewing a simple potion to cure boils, Snape swept around criticizing almost everyone except Malfoy, whom he praised excessively. When Neville nearly added porcupine quills before taking his cauldron off the fire, Harry quietly stopped him. Thanks, Neville whispered. That would have been nasty. Working together, are we? Snape appeared behind them suddenly. Longbottom, perhaps you should read the instructions yourself rather than relying on Potter's charity. I read them, sir, Neville replied with unexpected firmness. I just got distracted by the smoke from Seamus's cauldron. Harry was helping me refocus. Snape seemed taken aback by Neville's composed response. He had clearly expected the boy to stammer or cower. Instead, Neville met his gaze with the quiet confidence Alice had cultivated in him. Then pay closer attention, Snape said finally. And Potter, focus on your own work. When class ended, they escaped the dungeons with a sense of relief. That wasn't as bad as it could have been, Hermione assessed as they climbed toward the Great Hall. You really impressed him by knowing those answers, Harry. Barely, Harry replied. But Aunt Andy was right. He definitely has something against me personally. At least he didn't take points, Neville pointed out. And our potions were perfect. Preparation pays off. Hermione smiled. Just like Alice always says. Their discussion was interrupted by Ron catching up to them. Bloody hell, Harry! How do you know all that stuff? Snape looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. We studied. Harry shrugged. Potions can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Ron looked incredulous. Studied before term even started? You're as bad as Hermione. Thank you, Hermione said primly, choosing to take it as a compliment. Ron rolled his eyes good-naturedly. You're all mental. Anyway, want to visit Hagrid this afternoon? He sent me an invitation, said you could come too, Harry. Sure, Harry agreed. Neville and Hermione as well? Course. Ron nodded. More the merrier. As they continued to the Great Hall, Harry couldn't help noticing how easily Ron had integrated himself into their tight-knit group. There was something refreshingly straightforward about him that balanced their more intense dynamic. The visit to Hagrid's proved illuminating in unexpected ways. The gamekeeper lived in a small wooden house on the castle grounds, where a massive boarhound named Fang drooled enthusiastically over them all. While Hagrid's rock cakes threatened their dental health, his warm welcome and obvious affection for Harry touched something deep inside him. Here was someone else who had known his parents, who had held him as a baby, who had even delivered him to the Dursleys on that fateful night, though thankfully, he hadn't remained there long. Andromeda Tonks, eh? Hagrid mused when Harry explained his guardianship. Good witch, that one. Helped lots of Muggleborns during the war, she did. And Alice Longbottom, brave as they come. You knew my parents well? Harry asked eagerly. Course I did. Your dad, always in trouble, but with a good heart. And Lily, brightest witch of her year, and kind to everyone, even old Snape before. Well, never mind that. Harry pounced on the slip. Before what? Snape knew my mother? Hagrid shifted uncomfortably. Shouldn't have said that. Ancient history now. But Harry filed the information away for future investigation. Another puzzle piece in the complex relationship between Snape and his parents. As they sipped tea, Harry noticed a newspaper clipping on the table about the Gringotts break-in they'd discussed with Remus. The article mentioned the vault had been emptied earlier that day, just as Remus had said. Hagrid, Harry said casually, this Gringotts break-in sounds serious. It happened on my birthday, July 31st. Weird coincidence. Hagrid definitely avoided meeting Harry's eyes. Yeah, weird. More tea, anyone? Later, as they walked back to the castle, Harry shared his observations with the others. Hagrid knows something about the break-in. He looked guilty when I mentioned it. You think he helped move the stone to Hogwarts? Neville asked. Probably. Harry nodded. Dumbledore would trust him with something that important. So now we know for sure the stone is here. Hermione mused. Behind that forbidden corridor, most likely. Which we're definitely not investigating. Harry reminded her, though his expression suggested otherwise. Ron looked between them, confused. What stone? What are you three on about? They exchanged glances before Hermione said carefully. We have a theory about what's hidden in the third-floor corridor, but we need more information before sharing it. You lot have secrets already? Ron looked hurt. Thought we were friends. We are, Harry assured him. But this isn't just our secret to share. And it could be dangerous. All the more reason to tell me. Ron argued. 4 heads are better than 3. Harry considered this. Ron had proven loyal and straightforward, qualities they might need in the complications ahead. Okay, but not here. Common room, late tonight, when everyone's gone to bed. Ron nodded, satisfied. Deal. That night, they huddled in a corner of the deserted common room, speaking in hushed voices as Harry explained about the Philosopher's Stone, the Gringotts break-in, and their suspicions about Dumbledore using Hogwarts as both vault and potential trap. Blimey! Ron breathed when Harry finished. You really think you know who is after it? But he's gone, isn't he? We don't know, Harry admitted. Aunt Andy and Mum Alice have always been cautious about declaring him truly dead. Something about how suddenly he vanished, and how some Death Eaters still act like he might return. So what's the plan? Ron asked. We're going after the stone ourselves? No. Hermione looked alarmed. We promised we wouldn't go looking for it unless there was clear danger. We're just gathering information, Neville clarified, keeping our eyes open. But we should know what protections are in place, Harry added. Just in case. They debated strategy until the embers in the fireplace died down. Eventually, they agreed on a reconnaissance plan, observe the third-floor corridor from a distance, research possible magical protections in the library, and watch for suspicious behavior among the staff. Especially Snape, Ron insisted. Did you see how he looked at Harry during the feast? Proper hate in his eyes. It's not that simple, Harry countered, remembering Andromeda's warnings about jumping to conclusions. Snape has a history with my family, but that doesn't make him a stone thief. Still worth watching, Neville said pragmatically. Along with everyone else. As they finally headed to bed, Harry felt a curious mixture of apprehension and excitement. This was exactly the kind of situation Andromeda and Alice had prepared them for, a mystery with potential danger, requiring research, observation, and careful judgment. He just hoped their training would prove sufficient for whatever lay ahead. The next few weeks established a rhythm to their Hogwarts experience. Classes filled their days, while evenings alternated between homework, exploration, and their newly formed study group. The Defense Study Group had grown beyond their initial quartet to include several other first-years frustrated by Quirrell's incompetence. They met twice weekly in an unused classroom, practicing basic defensive spells under Harry and Hermione's guidance. Expelliarmus! Lavender Brown called, her wand movement nearly perfect, but her aim sending the spell wide of Parvati Patil. Almost! Harry encouraged. Just focus more on your target than your wand movement. The spell follows your intention as much as your wand. Across the room, Neville demonstrated shield positioning to Dean and Seamus. The angle matters, he explained. If you're just blocking, straight on works, but if you want to deflect spells away safely, you angle like this. Even Hermione, who initially worried about appearing to undermine a professor, had embraced their unofficial teaching role. Professor Quirrell means well, she told the group diplomatically. But practical experience is essential with defensive magic. After one particularly productive session, Professor McGonagall appeared in the doorway, observing silently. The students froze mid-practice, uncertain whether they were breaking rules. Professor, Hermione began nervously. We were just practicing defensive spells with remarkable proficiency for first years. McGonagall finished, entering the room. Yes, I can see that. She circled the group, examining their stance and grip. Who organized this study group? Harry stepped forward. We all did, Professor. We wanted more practical experience than we're getting in class. He braced for reprimand, but McGonagall's expression softened slightly. I see Alice Longbottom's influence in these shield positions, and Andromeda Tonks' precision in the wand work. Yes, Professor, Neville confirmed. My mum and Harry's guardian taught us basics before we came. McGonagall considered this. While extracurricular practice is not forbidden, unsupervised spell work can be dangerous. Perhaps. She paused thoughtfully. Perhaps I could arrange for a proper dueling space and occasional supervision. The students exchanged excited glances. That would be brilliant, Professor, Harry said eagerly. I'll speak with Professor Flitwick. He was a dueling champion in his youth. McGonagall surveyed the room once more. In the meantime, No spells above first-year level, and always have at least one person watching for accidents. Clear? Yes, Professor, they chorused. After she left, Ron whistled. Thought we were goners for sure. McGonagall offering to help? Mental. She respects proper magical education. Hermione explained. Even if it's supplementing the official curriculum. Speaking of curriculum, Harry said quietly to his core group, I noticed something odd about Quirrell. Besides the stutter and garlic stink? Ron asked. His knowledge is inconsistent, Harry explained. Sometimes he stumbles over basic concepts, but I've caught glimpses of advanced material in his notes. And his stutter comes and goes, Hermione added thoughtfully. It's worse when he's explaining something simple than when he occasionally goes off topic with darker examples. You think he's faking? Neville looked skeptical. Not necessarily faking, Harry clarified. But there's something off about him. And my scar hurts sometimes in his class. This last admission alarmed them all. Harry had been documenting these occurrences in his journal to Andromeda, who had grown increasingly concerned. That definitely goes on our watch list, Neville decided. Quirrell and Snape both. Their conversation shifted as they packed up, but Harry continued pondering the mystery of Quirrell. There was something about the nervous professor that didn't add up, something beneath the turban and behind the stutter that set Harry's instincts on edge. Halloween arrived with a feast more spectacular than any they'd experienced so far. The Great Hall had been decorated with live bats, enormous pumpkins, and magical jack-o'-lanterns that floated above the tables. But for Harry, the date carried darker significance, the anniversary of his parents' murders. Andromeda and Alice had always marked October 31st with quiet remembrance, sharing stories of Lily and James rather than focusing on their deaths. At Hogwarts, surrounded by celebratory decorations and excited chatter, Harry felt strangely disconnected from the festivities. You okay? Neville asked quietly as they took their seats. Harry nodded, not trusting his voice. Both Neville and Hermione understood without explanation, staying close as dinner began. Ron, however, remained oblivious to Harry's mood, enthusiastically describing the Halloween pranks his brothers had planned. Fred and George reckon they can charm the skeleton decorations to dance. McGonagall will have kittens. Harry was saved from responding by Professor Quirrell bursting into the Great Hall, his turban askew and terror on his face. Troll, he gasped, staggering toward Dumbledore. In the dungeons, thought you ought to know. He then collapsed in a dead faint. The hall erupted in panic until Dumbledore shot purple firecrackers from his wand to restore silence. He ordered prefects to lead their houses back to dormitories while teachers investigated the dungeons. As Percy Weasley gathered the Gryffindors with officious importance, Harry suddenly grabbed Neville's arm. The stone, he whispered urgently. This could be a diversion. Hermione's eyes widened. Someone letting in a troll while everyone's distracted. We need to check the third floor, Harry decided. Are you mental? Ron hissed. There's a troll loose. In the dungeons? Harry pointed out. Far from the third floor. But we promised Andromeda. Hermione began. To stay away unless there was clear danger, Harry finished. A troll as a diversion is pretty clear to me. They debated quickly, finally agreeing that Harry and Neville would investigate while Hermione and Ron maintained their alibi with the other Gryffindors. They slipped away from the group as it rounded a corner, ducking behind a stone griffin. 10 minutes, Hermione whispered fiercely. Then we're telling McGonagall. Harry and Neville nodded before hurrying toward the forbidden corridor, wands ready. Their footsteps echoed in the empty hallways as they climbed staircases and navigated shortcuts they'd discovered during their explorations. Hear that? Neville whispered as they approached the third-floor corridor. Footsteps, quick and determined, coming from ahead. They pressed themselves into an alcove, watching as a figure rounded the corner. Snape! Harry breathed, recognizing the billowing black robes. The potions master moved purposefully toward the forbidden corridor, glancing furtively over his shoulder. He didn't notice the hidden boys as he passed, stopping before the door they knew concealed whatever protected the stone. To their shock, Snape unlocked the door with a whispered spell and slipped inside. The door closed behind him, but not before a low, rumbling growl emerged from within. "What was that?" Neville whispered, wide-eyed. "Sounded like a dog?" Harry guessed. They crept closer to the door, straining to hear. More growls, a muffled curse from Snape, then silence. Suddenly, the door handle turned. They barely made it back to their hiding place before Snape emerged, his robes torn and his leg bleeding badly. He locked the door again and limped away, muttering darkly under his breath. "Did you see his leg?" Harry whispered once Snape was gone. "Something bit him," Neville confirmed. "Something big." They waited until Snape's limping footsteps faded before approaching the door. "Should we look inside?" Neville asked uncertainly. Harry hesitated. "No. We know something dangerous is guarding it. That's enough for now. Let's get back before we're missed." They hurried toward Gryffindor Tower, discussing what they'd seen. Snape was definitely interested in whatever lay beyond the door, but was he after the stone itself or checking the protections? "Either way," Harry said as they approached the portrait hole, "Hermione and Ron need to know." But as they entered the common room, they found chaos. Prefects were counting students, professors were questioning witnesses, and Hermione was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Hermione?" Harry asked Ron, who looked pale and guilty. "The troll got out of the dungeons," he explained miserably. "It's in the castle. And Hermione, she went looking for you too when you didn't come back. McGonagall's organizing a search party now." Harry felt his blood run cold. "We have to find her. Now." Before Ron could respond, Professor McGonagall's voice cut through the commotion. "All students are to remain in the tower. The troll has been located near the second-floor girls' bathroom, and teachers are handling the situation. The second-floor bathroom, where Hermione might be searching for them." Harry exchanged a desperate look with Neville. Without a word, they turned and bolted back through the portrait hole, ignoring the shouted protests behind them. Ron hesitated only briefly before following. "Mental, you lot are completely mental," he muttered as he caught up. They raced through corridors and down staircases, hearing a distant scream that confirmed their worst fears. As they rounded the corner to the bathroom corridor, an overwhelming stench hit them, like old socks and public toilets. And then they saw it, 12 feet tall with granite gray skin, a lumpy body, and a tiny head. The troll dragged a massive wooden club as it lumbered into the bathroom. Another scream echoed from inside. "Hermione!" they yelled in unison, charging forward. The scene inside was terrifying. Hermione was pressed against the wall, frozen in shock as the troll advanced, smashing sinks with its club. "Distract it!" Harry commanded, grabbing a tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll turned, confused by the noise. Neville and Ron joined in, hurling debris from the destroyed stalls. "Hermione, move!" Neville shouted, but she remained paralyzed with fear. The troll roared in annoyance, turning back toward Hermione. In that moment, Harry's training took over. "Cover me!" he called to Neville, who immediately understood. While Neville cast a perfect shield charm between Hermione and the troll, Harry ran forward, leaping onto the creature's back. His wand, thrust upward by instinct, went straight up the troll's nostril. The troll howled in pain, flailing wildly with Harry clinging to its neck. "Ron!" Neville shouted. "The levitation charm! The club!" Ron's eyes widened in comprehension. Raising his wand with newfound confidence, he called, "Wingardium Leviosa!" The club flew from the troll's grasp, rose high into the air, and then dropped with a sickening crack onto its owner's head. The troll swayed, then fell flat on its face with a thud that shook the entire bathroom. Harry climbed to his feet, shaking and breathless. Neville lowered his shield, rushing to Hermione. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping her up. She nodded mutely, staring at the unconscious troll. "Is it dead?" she managed finally. "Just knocked out, I think," Harry said, retrieving his wand from the troll's nose with a grimace. "Ugh, troll bogies. A sudden slam made them all jump. Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell burst into the bathroom, stopping short at the sight before them, for first years standing over an unconscious mountain troll. McGonagall's face drained of color, either from anger or shock. "What on earth were you thinking?" she demanded, cold fury in her voice. "You could have been killed! Why aren't you in your dormitory?" Snape bent over the troll, examining it critically, while Quirrell sank onto a toilet seat, clutching his heart. Harry opened his mouth to explain, but Hermione spoke first. "Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me." Her voice trembled but held firm. "I went looking for the troll because I thought I could handle it. I've read all about them." Harry, Neville, and Ron stared in amazement. Hermione Granger, telling a blatant lie to a teacher? "If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now," she continued. "Harry stuck his wand up its nose, Neville shielded me, and Ron knocked it out with its own club. They didn't have time to fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived." The professors exchanged skeptical glances. Snape's eyes narrowed as he looked from Harry to the troll. "Well," McGonagall said finally, "that was exceptionally foolish, Miss Granger. 5 points from Gryffindor for serious lack of judgment." She turned to the boys. "As for you three, well, not many first years could take on a full-grown mountain troll and live to tell the tale. 5 points, to each of you. For sheer dumb luck." As they left the bathroom, Harry noticed Snape watching them with an unreadable expression. Their eyes met briefly, and Harry felt a curious sensation, as if Snape was trying to see beyond his surface thoughts. Remembering Andromeda's occlumency lessons, Harry visualized his calm pond, letting nothing disturb its surface. Snape's eyebrow rose fractionally before he looked away, limping slightly as he followed the other professors. Back in the common room, after assurances to worried housemates and a stern lecture from Percy, the 4 friends finally had a moment to themselves. "Why did you lie to McGonagall?" Ron asked Hermione incredulously. She flushed. "You all came to save me. I wasn't going to let you get in trouble for that." "We wouldn't have needed to save you if we hadn't left you," Harry pointed out guiltily. "Or if I'd remembered you weren't with the group," Ron added. "Some lookout I was." "What did you find, anyway?" Hermione asked, changing the subject. Harry and Neville described Snape's visit to the forbidden door and the growling creature behind it. "A 3-headed dog," Hermione concluded confidently. "It must be a Cerberus, guarding the entrance to the stone's hiding place." "How do you know it has 3 heads?" Neville asked, bewildered. "I don't for certain," she admitted. "But in classical mythology, Cerberus creatures guard entrances to treasures or underworlds. It makes logical sense." "Mental," Ron muttered again, but with newfound respect. "So Snape's trying to steal the stone? Or checking that it's safe?" Harry countered. "We still don't know which. But we know the troll was a diversion," Hermione pointed out. "Someone let it in deliberately. And not Snape," Harry added thoughtfully. "He was already injured when we saw him. He must have gone straight to the 3rd floor when the alarm was raised. So who let the troll in?" Neville wondered. They had no answers, only more questions. But as they finally went to bed, Harry felt their bond had strengthened through shared danger. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, now a quartet rather than a trio. November brought bitter cold and the start of Quidditch season. To everyone's surprise, Harry had been appointed Gryffindor Seeker after McGonagall spotted him making a spectacular diving catch during their first flying lesson. The circumstances, saving Neville's remembrance from Malfoy's taunting theft, had made the appointment even sweeter. Youngest house player in a century, Wood, the Gryffindor captain, reminded him as they changed for Harry's first match against Slytherin. "But no pressure, Potter?" Harry's stomach churned with nerves, but years of flying at home had prepared him well. The shock had been discovering his natural talent for the seeker position, a talent Andromeda confirmed his father had shared. In the stands, Hermione, Neville, and Ron joined the Gryffindors cheering wildly as the teams walked onto the pitch. Hagrid squeezed in beside them, carrying enormous binoculars. Been watchin' from me hut, he explained. But it's not the same. Harry all right? Looks a bit peaky. He'll be fine once it starts, Neville assured him, though he looked nearly as nervous as Harry. When Madame Hooch blew her whistle, 15 brooms rose high into the air. The game began at a furious pace, with Gryffindor quickly taking the lead. Harry circled above, searching for the golden snitch as Wood had instructed. His eyes occasionally darted to the teacher's stand, where he'd spotted Snape watching him with unusual intensity. Suddenly his broom gave a frightening lurch. He gripped the handle tightly, thinking he'd imagined it, until it happened again, more violently. His Nimbus 2000 seemed determined to buck him off, zigzagging through the air and making sudden, jerking movements. No one else seemed to have noticed Harry's predicament. The Nimbus carried him higher, away from the game, jerking and twitching as it went. In the stands, Hermione was the first to realize something was wrong. "Look at Harry's broom!" she gasped, pointing. Hagrid raised his binoculars. "Can't be. Dark magic, that is. No kid could interfere with a Nimbus 2000. Hermione grabbed the binoculars, scanning the crowd frantically until she found what she sought. "It's Snape," she whispered urgently. "Look. He's maintaining eye contact and muttering, classic signs of a jinx." "What do we do?" Ron asked desperately as Harry clung to his violently bucking broomstick. Neville, however, was scanning the stands with narrowed eyes. "Wait," he said suddenly. "Look at Quirrell too." Through the binoculars, they saw Quirrell also staring unblinkingly at Harry, his lips moving rapidly. "One's jinxing, one's counter-jinxing," Hermione concluded. "But which is which? No time to figure it out," Neville decided. "Break both their eye contact." Hermione passed the binoculars to Ron, then disappeared into the crowd. Minutes later, they spotted her crouching beneath the stands near the teachers' section. Blue flames erupted suddenly from beneath both Snape and Quirrell's seats. In the ensuing chaos, Harry's broom stopped trying to throw him off, allowing him to regain control. What happened next became instant Hogwarts legend. Harry dove toward the ground at breakneck speed, clapping his hand to his mouth as if he might be sick. He hit the pitch on all fours, coughed, and something golden fell into his palm. "I've got the snitch!" he shouted, waving it above his head. Gryffindor won 170-60, but the celebration was tempered by the disturbing realization that someone had tried to seriously harm Harry. Later, in Hagrid's hut, they debated who was responsible. "It was Snape," Ron insisted. "Hermione saw him cursing Harry's broom." "Rubbish," Hagrid dismissed. "Why would Snape do something like that? We found out he tried to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween," Harry explained. "It bit him. We think he's after whatever it's guarding." Hagrid dropped his teapot. "How do you know about Fluffy?" "Fluffy?" they echoed incredulously. "Yeah, he's mine," Hagrid said proudly. "Bought him from a Greek chappie last year. Lent him to Dumbledore to guard the—" he caught himself. "The Philosopher's Stone?" Harry suggested innocently. Hagrid looked thunderstruck. "How do ya? We pieced it together," Hermione explained. "And someone is trying to steal it." "Codswallop," Hagrid insisted. "Professor Snape is a Hogwarts teacher. He's helping protect the stone, not steal it." "Then why did he just try to kill Harry?" Ron demanded. "We don't know it was Snape," Neville interjected. "Quirrell was also maintaining eye contact. Either could have been jinxing or counter-jinxing." This possibility silenced them momentarily. "Listen to me, all of ya," Hagrid said seriously. "You're meddlin' in things that don't concern ya. Forget about the stone. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel." "Nicholas Flamel!" Harry pounced on the slip. "So he is involved." Hagrid looked furious with himself. As they walked back to the castle, Harry shared his suspicions. "We need to research Nicholas Flamel. There must be a connection beyond just creating the stone. And we need to be more careful about both Snape and Quirrell," Neville added. "Whoever tried to jinx your broom isn't finished. You should tell Andromeda about this." Hermione urged. Through your journal. Harry nodded. Already planning to. She needs to know someone's making active attempts now, not just suspicious behavior. But as they entered the castle, Harry couldn't shake a growing certainty that events were accelerating towards some inevitable confrontation, one their years of preparation might still not be enough to handle. Christmas approached with a blanket of thick snow covering the grounds. The lake froze solid, and the Weasley twins were punished for bewitching several snowballs to follow Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. Harry, Neville, and Hermione had reported the broomstick incident to Andromeda and Alice through their journals. The reply had been swift and alarming: extreme caution. Someone powerful is actively targeting Harry. Report any unusual incidents immediately. We're investigating Quirrell's background. Alice petitioning for Hogwarts security review. Consider coming home for Christmas. Love, A&A. After much discussion, they decided Harry and Neville would return home for the holidays, while Hermione visited her parents. Ron, whose family was visiting his brother Charlie in Romania, would remain at Hogwarts. We can use the break to strategize, Harry told Ron. You'll have the library almost to yourself to research Flamel. Brilliant, Ron groaned. Christmas in the library? Just what I always wanted. The holiday itself provided a welcome respite. Returning to the cottage felt like stepping back into a world where they were simply children, not investigators of dangerous magical artifacts and potential dark wizards. Andromeda and Alice welcomed them with fierce hugs and worried expressions they tried to disguise as normal parental concern. You've lost weight, Andromeda accused Harry, examining him critically. Not enough vegetables at Hogwarts? Plenty of vegetables, Harry assured her. Just lots of running around between classes. And dodging cursed brooms, Alice added dryly, checking Neville for similar signs of neglect. Let's get you fed, then we can discuss everything properly. After a hearty meal, they gathered in the living room, where a cheerful fire and twinkling Christmas decorations created a deceptive sense of normalcy. So, Andromeda began without preamble. Someone tried to kill you during a Quidditch match. Harry nodded. Either Snape or Quirrell, we think. Both were maintaining eye contact and muttering. And this was after the troll incident, Alice clarified, which may have been a diversion to check on the stone's protections. Yes, Neville confirmed. We saw Snape coming from the third-floor corridor with a bite on his leg. Andromeda and Alice exchanged significant looks. We've been making inquiries, Andromeda said carefully. About Professor Quirrell specifically. Did you know he took a year-long sabbatical just before starting as your defense teacher? Alice asked. Harry and Neville shook their heads. He traveled extensively, particularly in Albania. She continued, where rumors of dark activity have persisted for years. Albania. Harry repeated, the significance clicking. Where Voldemort was last rumored to be hiding. Precisely. Andromeda confirmed grimly. It may be coincidence, but we don't believe in coincidences. Harry finished. You think Quirrell might be working for Voldemort? Or possessed by him somehow? It's a possibility we can't dismiss, Alice said. Especially given your Scar's reaction in his presence. They spent hours discussing theories and strategies, including advanced defensive spells Alice insisted on teaching them before their return to school. Remember, she emphasized as they practiced in the training room. A well-cast simple spell is better than a poorly executed complex one. If you're in real danger, Expelliarmus and Protego can save your life. On Christmas morning, after presents and a special breakfast, Harry found Andromeda alone in the study. I need to ask you something, he said, closing the door. About Sirius. Andromeda's expression softened. What about him? Is there any progress? With proving his innocence? She sighed. Some. Remus has been tracking a lead about Peter Pettigrew, following rumors of a man who occasionally transforms from rat to human in remote areas. So you really think Pettigrew is alive? And Sirius is innocent? I believe so, Andromeda said carefully. But belief isn't proof. And without proof. He stays in Azkaban. Harry finished bitterly. It's not fair. No, it's not. Andromeda agreed. But we're not giving up. In fact, she hesitated before continuing. Alice has finally secured permission to question Sirius directly. She's visiting Azkaban next month. Harry's eyes widened. That's huge. Why didn't you tell me? Because Azkaban is a terrible place, Harry. The Dementors there, they drain all happiness, all hope. Alice will be exposing herself to significant trauma to conduct this interview. We didn't want to raise your expectations only to have them crushed if Sirius is not well enough to help his own case. Harry nodded slowly. I understand. But if he is innocent, and if you can prove it, then you'll have your godfather back. Andromeda finished softly. Which is what James and Lily would have wanted. The rest of the holiday passed too quickly, filled with defensive training, strategy discussions, and precious moments of normalcy, playing Exploding Snap or helping Andromeda bake traditional Christmas treats. Before they knew it, they were back on the Hogwarts Express, their trunks now containing not only school supplies but also specialized defensive items Alice had insisted they carry. Remember, she'd said during their final briefing, your priority is staying safe, not solving the mystery. If you find concrete evidence of danger to the stone, contact us immediately. Don't try to handle it yourselves. Unless there's no time. Harry had countered, always practical. Alice had sighed. Unless there's absolutely no time. In which case, use everything we've taught you, and stay together. As the train pulled away from the station, Harry caught a final glimpse of Andromeda and Alice standing together on the platform, their expressions a mixture of pride and worry. They're scared for us, Neville observed quietly. Yes, Harry agreed. But they're also confident in us. That's why they keep training us instead of just locking us away somewhere safe. Hermione joined them in their compartment, full of stories about her Muggle Christmas and eager to hear about their holiday training. I've been thinking about the Jinx broom, she said after they exchanged updates. It required significant power and concentration. Not many wizards could maintain it against the Nimbus 2000's protective enchantments. Which suggests whoever did it is exceptionally powerful, Harry concluded. Or drawing power from somewhere else, Hermione added significantly. The implication hung between them, or someone else. Like Voldemort. Their discussion was interrupted by the compartment door sliding open to reveal Ron, looking excited. Found something, he announced triumphantly. About Flamel. He dropped into the seat beside Harry, lowering his voice dramatically. Was in the library over break, looking through old daily prophets for anything about him. Found this tiny article from 1943 about Flamel and Dumbledore working together on something called the alchemical applications of dragon blood. So they're longtime collaborators? Hermione mused. That explains why Flamel would trust Dumbledore with the stone. There's more. Ron continued. The article mentioned Flamel's extraordinary longevity even back then. Said he was already over 500 years old. The elixir of life. Harry nodded. He's been using it all this time. But why move the stone now? Neville wondered. After centuries of keeping it safe himself? Maybe he's tired, Ron suggested. 500 years is a long life. Or maybe, Harry said slowly, he knows Voldemort is trying to return and wants the stone somewhere more secure than his own home. The possibility sobered them all. If Nicholas Flamel, a legendary alchemist with centuries of magical knowledge, felt his creation wasn't safe with him anymore, what chance did Hogwarts, or they, really have? Winter melted into spring, bringing with it increasing tension about end-of-year exams and the still unsolved mystery of the Philosopher's Stone. Their research had revealed no further information about Nicholas Flamel, and their observations of Snape and Quirrell had yielded nothing conclusive. Harry had received concerning updates from Andromeda about Alice's visit to Azkaban. While Sirius had maintained his innocence, years of Dementor exposure had affected his mental clarity. He'd rambled about the rat, and insisted Peter was the true traitor but couldn't provide coherent evidence. More worrying was the toll the visit had taken on Alice. The Dementors had forced her to relive her torture at Bellatrix's hands, requiring several days of recovery afterward. These distant concerns, however, were overshadowed by a more immediate crisis one evening in late April. Harry, Neville, and Ron were playing wizard chess in the common room while Hermione reviewed Transfiguration notes, when Hedwig tapped urgently at the window. The snowy owl carried a hastily scrawled note. "It's hatching." Ron jumped up immediately. "Hagrid's dragon egg! We've got to go!" Hermione looked scandalized. "We have classes in an hour!" "Hermione, how many times will we see a dragon hatching?" Ron countered. "We shouldn't know about it in the first place," she hissed. "Dragon breeding is illegal. Which is why we should convince him to get rid of it before it's too late," Harry reasoned. "We'll just go down for morning break." Reluctantly, Hermione agreed. When they arrived at Hagrid's hut later that morning, they found the gamekeeper flushed with excitement, the black egg lying on his table with deep cracks along its shell. "It's nearly out," he whispered reverently. They gathered around as the egg split open, revealing a crumpled black hatchling that resembled a wrinkled umbrella. It sneezed, sending sparks flying from its snout. "Isn't he beautiful?" Hagrid murmured, reaching out to stroke its scaly head. The dragon snapped at his fingers with pointed fangs. "Bless him, he knows his mummy!" "Hagrid," Hermione said gently, "how fast do Norwegian ridgebacks grow?" "Well, pretty quick," Hagrid admitted. "But I've got it all planned out. Your house is made of wood," Neville pointed out practically. "And dragons breathe fire. And you live on school grounds," Harry added. "Someone will notice eventually." "I can't just abandon him," Hagrid protested, looking heartbroken. "What about Ron's brother?" Harry suggested. "Charlie works with dragons in Romania, right? Could he take it?" Ron brightened. "That's brilliant! I could write to him tonight." The plan took shape over the next week as the dragon, which Hagrid named Norbert, grew alarmingly fast. Charlie agreed to arrange for some colleagues to collect Norbert from the astronomy tower at midnight the following Saturday. Getting a rapidly growing dragon from Hagrid's hut to the tower unseen, however, presented a significant challenge. "We'll need the invisibility cloak," Harry decided, referring to his father's cloak that Dumbledore had mysteriously returned to him at Christmas. "But Norbert's already too big for all of us to fit under it with him. 2 of us should go," Neville suggested. "The others can create a diversion if needed." "I'll go," Harry volunteered. "It's my cloak, and I know the castle's night patrols best." "And I'll help," Ron offered, but his contribution was cut short when Norbert bit his hand the next day, causing it to swell alarmingly. "Hospital wing for you," Hermione decided, examining the greenish wound. "Dragon bites can be toxic." With Ron incapacitated, Neville stepped up. "I'll go with Harry. We've trained for stealth together." The plan might have worked perfectly if not for a crucial oversight. They left Charlie's response letter in a book Ron had loaned to Malfoy, who now knew exactly what they were planning. On Saturday night, Harry and Neville packed Norbert into a large crate, wrapped the invisibility cloak around themselves, and began the precarious journey through the castle. The dragon weighed a ton, and the crate made navigating narrow staircases nearly impossible. Merlin's beard. Neville panted as they rested halfway up a staircase. "He's heavier than he looks." "Just a bit further," Harry encouraged, though his arms were shaking from exertion. They froze as voices drifted from the corridor ahead. Professor McGonagall, in a tartan bathrobe and hairnet, was dragging Malfoy by the ear. "Detention!" she shouted. "And 20 points from Slytherin. Wandering around at midnight. How dare you?" "You don't understand, Professor," Malfoy pleaded. "Harry Potter's coming. He's got a dragon." "What utter rubbish!" McGonagall fumed. "Come on, we'll see Professor Snape about you." The sound of McGonagall hauling Malfoy away was music to their ears. Suppressing laughter, they continued their climb, finally reaching the astronomy tower's top platform. Charlie's friends arrived precisely at midnight, a cheerful bunch who showed them the harness they'd rigged for Norbert. After securely attaching the crate, They shook Harry and Neville's hands and departed into the night sky. We did it, Neville breathed, watching the dragon handlers shrink to specks in the distance. Let's get back before our luck runs out, Harry suggested, throwing the cloak over them again. But their celebration was premature. At the foot of the tower, they encountered Filch, who looked directly at them despite the cloak. Who's there? He wheezed, his lamp illuminating the space where they stood frozen. With horror, Harry realized they'd left muddy footprints from Hagrid's hut. The cloak concealed them, but not their tracks. Filch's eyes narrowed as he followed the prints. I know you're there, he whispered gleefully. Can't hide from me. He reached out, his gnarled hand inches from the cloak when a loud crash echoed from a nearby corridor. Filch's head whipped around. Peeves! He bellowed, forgetting the invisible students as he rushed toward the disturbance. Harry and Neville didn't question their luck, hurrying back toward Gryffindor Tower by a different route. They were nearly there when a figure stepped out of the shadows. Well, Professor McGonagall said coldly. Out for a midnight stroll, are we? The invisibility cloak had slipped just enough to reveal their feet. With resignation, Harry pulled it off completely. I'm disgusted, McGonagall continued, leading them to her office. 3 students out of bed in one night. Mr. Malfoy claimed some cock-and-bull story about a dragon, but I never expected this from you two. Professor, we can explain, Harry began. Save it, Mr. Potter. Nothing justifies sneaking around after hours. 50 points from Gryffindor, yes, 50 each, and detention for both of you. Now back to your dormitory immediately. The loss of 100 points in a single night plummeted Gryffindor from first to last place in the House Cup standings. When their housemates discovered who was responsible, Harry and Neville found themselves pariahs overnight. It was for a good reason. Hermione defended them in the common room the next day, though even she looked stricken by the massive point loss. What reason could possibly be worth 100 points? Seamus demanded. Harry and Neville exchanged glances, unable to explain without implicating Hagrid. Trust us, Harry said finally. It was important. More important than the House Cup? Angelina Johnson asked incredulously. Yes, Neville said quietly but firmly. Some things are. The hostility eventually died down as exams approached, though the disappointment lingered. Their detention was scheduled for the following week with Filch, who took great pleasure in informing them they'd be serving it in the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid. Seems a bit counterintuitive, Hermione observed. Punishing you for being out of bounds by sending you somewhere even more out of bounds. At least it's with Hagrid, Neville pointed out. Could be worse. But when the night arrived, and Filch led them and Malfoy, who'd received the same punishment, to Hagrid's hut, Harry felt distinctly uneasy. Something about the dark forest ahead seemed to call to him, like a half-forgotten memory. We'll be searching for a wounded unicorn, Hagrid explained, his crossbow loaded. Something's been hurting them. Found one dead last week. What could hurt a unicorn? Harry asked. They're incredibly fast and powerful magical creatures. That's the troubling part, Hagrid admitted. Not many creatures can catch a unicorn. Whatever it is, it's not natural. They split into 2 groups, Hagrid with Hermione and Malfoy, while Harry and Neville went with Fong, Hagrid's boarhound. The arrangement lasted until Malfoy sneaked up behind Neville and grabbed him, causing Hermione to scream. After that, Hagrid rearranged them. Harry and Malfoy went one direction, while he took Neville and Hermione another way. Wait till my father hears about this, Malfoy muttered as they followed a trail of silvery unicorn blood deeper into the forest. This is servant stuff. If you'd rather leave, I won't stop you, Harry replied coldly. But there's something out there hurting unicorns, and I intend to find out what. Malfoy fell silent, his fear apparently greater than his need to complain. They continued following the blood trail until they reached a clearing. There, lying on the ground, was the unicorn, dead and glowing faintly in the moonlight. Its pearly white body looked strangely beautiful even in death. Before they could approach, a slithering sound made them freeze. From the shadows, a hooded figure crawled across the ground like a stalking beast. It reached the unicorn, lowered its head to the wound in the creature's side, and began to drink its blood. Malfoy screamed and bolted. Fong followed, leaving Harry alone with the hooded figure, which raised its head and looked directly at him. Unicorn blood dripped from where its mouth should be. Pain cleaved through Harry's head like never before, his scar burning white-hot as if someone had pressed a branding iron to his forehead. Half-blinded, he staggered backward as the figure rose and glided toward him. Through the pain, Harry heard his training: stand your ground. Focus through pain. Channel it. His wand was in his hand before he consciously drew it. Protego! He gasped, erecting a shimmering shield between himself and the advancing figure. The shield slowed but didn't stop the creature. It raised a skeletal hand, reaching through the magical barrier as if it were merely thick syrup. Hoofbeats thundered behind him. Something jumped over Harry, charging at the figure. A centaur, palomino-bodied with white blonde hair, reared angrily at the hooded creature, which finally retreated into the darkness. As the pain in Harry's scar subsided, the centaur turned to him. "Are you all right?" "Yes, thank you," Harry managed, getting to his feet. "What was that?" The centaur studied him with astonishingly blue eyes. "You are the Potter boy. You should not be here. The forest is not safe at this time, especially for you." "Why especially for me? What was that thing?" "Can you think of no one who has waited years to return to power, who has clung to life, awaiting their chance?" Harry's blood ran cold. "Voldemort." The centaur, who introduced himself as Firenze, nodded grimly. "Unicorn blood will keep you alive even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have but a half-life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touches your lips. But who would choose such a life? Can you think of no one desperate enough, waiting for their chance to return to power?" Harry's mind raced. "Voldemort's here. At Hogwarts. He wants the stone to fully restore himself. The stars have been read wrongly before," Firenze said mysteriously. "Even centaurs. I hope this is one such occasion." Hagrid arrived moments later with Neville, Hermione, and a terrified Malfoy in tow. They escorted Harry back to the castle, where he immediately told his friends everything. "So you know who is in the forest?" Ron whispered, having joined them in the common room despite his bandaged hand. "And he's after the stone to come back to life. But he's not alone," Harry added, pacing. "He's too weak to operate independently. Someone's helping him, someone with access to Hogwarts." "Quirrell," Neville stated with certainty. "Think about it, the stutter that comes and goes, the turban he never removes, his year in Albania. And your scar hurting around him," Hermione added. "It all fits. We need to tell someone," Ron urged. "Dumbledore, he's gone to London," Harry interrupted. "I heard McGonagall tell Flitwick earlier. Won't be back until tomorrow." "Convenient timing," Hermione noted darkly. "Too convenient," Harry agreed. "I think Quirrell's going after the stone tonight." "What do we do?" Neville asked, his expression determined rather than frightened. "We stop him," Harry said simply. "We know it's guarded by Fluffy and probably other protections from different professors. We also know how to get past Fluffy," Hermione reminded them. "Hagrid lets slip that music puts him to sleep. So we go tonight," Harry decided. "After everyone's asleep." "I'll write to Andromeda first," Neville suggested. "Even if they can't get here in time, they should know." Harry nodded. "Good thinking. But we're not waiting for help. If Voldemort gets that stone, he returns to power," Ron finished soberly. "And the war starts again." As they prepared throughout the day, checking and rechecking their wands, reviewing spells, and gathering potentially useful items, Harry felt oddly calm. Everything they had learned, from Alice's defensive training to Andromeda's lessons in magical theory, from occlumency practice to their studies of wizarding history, had prepared them for this moment. They were no longer just first years stumbling upon a mystery. They were prepared, They were determined, and they were together. That night, after the common room emptied, they gathered beneath the invisibility cloak. Though it barely covered all four of them, they managed to shuffle awkwardly to the third floor without detection. The door to Fluffy's chamber was already ajar. "Quirrell's been here," Harry whispered. Neville nodded grimly, pulling out a wooden flute he'd brought. "Ready?" They pushed the door open wider, revealing the massive three-headed dog. All six eyes were open and alert, though a discarded harp near its paws suggested Quirrell had already passed through. Neville began to play, a tuneless melody that nevertheless worked immediately. Fluffy's eyes drooped, then closed completely as the beast slumped to the ground, fast asleep. "Keep playing," Harry whispered, moving toward the trapdoor visible beneath one of Fluffy's paws. They carefully shifted the massive limb and opened the door, revealing a dark drop below. "I'll go first," Harry decided. "If it's safe, I'll call up. If not, get help immediately." Without waiting for arguments, he lowered himself into the hole and let go. Cool, damp air rushed past him as he fell, landing with a muffled thump on something soft and plant-like. "It's okay," he called up. "Soft landing." Ron came next, followed by Hermione. Neville jumped last, the flute's melody ending abruptly as he dropped. Above them, they heard Fluffy stir and growl. "Lucky this plant thing's here," Ron commented, trying to free himself from the snake-like tendrils that had begun wrapping around his ankles. "Lucky?" Hermione shrieked. "Look at you!" Harry realized with horror that the plant was winding itself tightly around all of them. Only Hermione had managed to roll quickly away when she landed. "Devil's snare!" Neville identified it instantly. "Don't struggle, it'll only kill you faster." "Kill us faster?" Ron yelled, fighting harder as the plant curled around his chest. "Oh, now I can relax." "Neville's right," Hermione called. "Stay still." Harry and Neville forced themselves to go limp. The plant's grip loosened enough for them to slip below it, landing on solid ground beside Hermione. Ron, however, continued thrashing in panic. "He's not listening!" Harry shouted. "Devil's snare, devil's snare," Neville muttered frantically. "What did Professor Sprout say?" "It likes dark and damp, fire!" Hermione exclaimed, whipping out her wand. "Incendio!" Bright flames shot from her wand, causing the plant to recoil. Ron wriggled free, falling to join them below. "Lucky we pay attention in herbology," Harry commented as they brushed themselves off. "Lucky Neville knows his plants," Ron corrected, still shaking. They continued down a stone passageway, the only way forward. As they walked, a gentle rushing sound grew louder. "Sounds like water," Neville observed. "Or wings," Harry countered as they emerged into a brilliantly lit chamber. Above them, hundreds of jewel-bright birds fluttered and swooped. At the opposite end stood a heavy wooden door. "They're not birds," Hermione realized, squinting upward. "They're keys! Winged keys!" Broomsticks leaned against the wall nearby. "So we've got to catch the key to the door," Harry concluded, examining the lock. "It'll be old-fashioned, probably silver like the handle." They mounted the brooms, soaring into the cloud of keys. Harry's seeker instincts took over as he scanned the glittering flock. "There!" he called, pointing to a large silver key with a bent wing. "It looks like it's already been caught and roughly used." Working together, they cornered and caught the injured key. It fit perfectly, allowing them into the next chamber, where a massive chessboard stretched before them. "Now what?" Hermione whispered. "It's obvious, isn't it?" Ron said, stepping forward with newfound confidence. "We've got to play our way across." Under Ron's strategic direction, they took positions as pieces on the giant board. The game that followed was brutal, the opposing pieces showing no mercy when capturing. When Ron realized he needed to sacrifice himself to secure their victory, Harry nearly objected. "It's the only way," Ron insisted. "I'll be fine." "Probably." His knight was smashed violently by the White Queen, leaving Ron unconscious but allowing Harry to checkmate the king. "We have to keep going," Harry urged when Hermione wanted to stay with Ron. He'll be okay. Quirrell's getting closer to the stone every minute. Reluctantly, they left Ron and entered the next chamber, immediately assaulted by a foul odor. Troll! Neville identified, wrinkling his nose. Fortunately, this one was already unconscious, an enormous lump on its head. Quirrell's work, Harry guessed as they hurried past. He seems to have a way with trolls. The next challenge was Snape's, 7 differently shaped bottles standing in a row on a table, with flames instantly springing up to block both forward and backward passages. A roll of parchment provided a logic puzzle that Hermione quickly solved. The smallest bottle will get one of us through the black flames toward the stone, she concluded. And this rounded one will take us back through the purple flames. Harry examined the tiny bottle. There's only enough for one person. Which means I go on alone, Harry said firmly. Neville, take Hermione back. Get Ron. Send owls to Dumbledore and Andromeda. Use the brooms from the key room to get past Fluffy. Neville looked ready to argue but finally nodded. Be careful, Harry. You're facing more than just Quirrell if we're right. I know, Harry said quietly. That's why I need you both safe. Get help. Hermione suddenly threw her arms around him. You're a great wizard, Harry. Not as good as you, he replied honestly. Me? Books and cleverness? She shook her head. There are more important things, friendship and bravery. They shared one last determined look before Harry drank the potion and stepped through the black flames. The final chamber contained just one item, the Mirror of Ares that Harry had discovered during Christmas explorations. And before it stood not Quirrell, but Snape. I knew it, Harry declared, wand raised. You're after the stone for Voldemort. Snape turned, his expression unreadable. Potter. I wondered if you'd appear. Step away from the mirror, Harry commanded, his voice steadier than he felt. I think not, Snape replied silkily. I've been waiting for this opportunity too long. To get the stone for your master? Harry challenged. Something like confusion flashed across Snape's face. My master? You think I... He broke off with a cold laugh. How predictably Gryffindor of you, Potter. Always jumping to the wrong conclusions. Before Harry could respond, the chamber door opened again. Professor Quirrell stepped through, his face no longer twitching, his stutter completely gone. Well done, Severus, he said smoothly. You've led the boy straight to us, just as planned. Harry's wand darted between the two professors, confusion evident on his face. There was no plan, Quirrell, Snape spat. I've been trying to stop you all year. So poorly, Quirrell laughed. Though I admit your counterjinx during the Quidditch match was surprisingly strong. I might not have succeeded in killing Potter if that bushy-haired girl hadn't set you on fire. Understanding dawned on Harry. You were protecting me, he realized, looking at Snape. And Quirrell was trying to kill me. Finally, the boy shows a glimmer of intelligence, Snape drawled. Quirrell's eyes narrowed dangerously. Enough talk. Step aside, Severus. The boy is mine. I think not, Snape replied, his wand rising. What followed was the most intense duel Harry had ever witnessed. Spells crackled through the air as the two professors battled, either giving ground. Snape fought with precision and economy, while Quirrell attacked with surprising power and viciousness. A particularly nasty curse caught Snape in the chest, sending him flying into the stone wall where he crumpled, unconscious or worse. Now, Quirrell said, turning to Harry with a twisted smile. Where were we? Harry raised his wand, falling instinctively into the defensive stance Alice had drilled into him. You won't get the stone. Brave words from a child, Quirrell sneered, approaching the mirror. Dumbledore's clever, using this to hide it. But he's not here to save you now. I don't need saving, Harry replied, though his racing heart suggested otherwise. Quirrell studied his reflection in the mirror, frustration growing visible. I see myself presenting the stone to my master, but how do I get it? Is it inside the mirror? Should I break it? Use the boy. A high, cold voice whispered, seemingly from Quirrell himself. Quirrell rounded on Harry. "Come here, Potter! Look in the mirror and tell me what you see." Harry approached cautiously, positioning himself to see his reflection. To his amazement, Mirror Harry smiled, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a blood-red stone. As he returned it to his pocket, Harry felt the real stone drop into his actual pocket. He had it. Somehow, the mirror had given it to him. "Well?" Quirrell demanded impatiently. "What do you see?" Harry's occlumency training kicked in, helping him craft a believable lie. "I see myself shaking hands with Dumbledore. I've won the House Cup." Quirrell cursed, shoving him aside. "Useless! He lies," the cold voice whispered again. "Let me speak to him, face to face." "Master, you are not strong enough," Quirrell protested. "I have strength enough for this." To Harry's horror, Quirrell began unwrapping his turban. As the fabric fell away, he turned slowly to reveal a face on the back of his head, chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. "Harry Potter," it whispered. "Voldemort." The face of the wizard who had murdered his parents was growing from the back of Quirrell's head like some grotesque parasite. "See what I have become," Voldemort continued. "Mere shadow and vapor, forced to share another's body. Unicorn blood has sustained me, but the elixir of life will restore my powers fully. Now, give me the stone in your pocket." Harry's hand moved to his wand, but Quirrell was faster, disarming him with a flick. "Don't be a fool," Voldemort hissed. "Better to save your own life and join me, or meet the same end as your parents. They died begging for mercy." "Liar!" Harry shouted, rage overcoming fear. "My parents died fighting you. Standing against everything you represent." He backed away, mind racing. Without his wand, he needed another strategy. The stone weighed heavily in his pocket as he calculated his options. "Seize him!" Voldemort screamed. Quirrell lunged, grabbing Harry by the wrist. Immediately, needle-sharp pains seared through Harry's scar, but something else happened too. Quirrell howled in agony, releasing Harry to stare at his blistering hands. "My hands!" "Master, I cannot hold him. My hands!" "Then kill him, fool!" Voldemort shrieked. As Quirrell raised his wand, Harry acted on pure instinct. He launched himself forward, pressing his bare hands to Quirrell's face. The professor screamed as his skin burned and blistered at Harry's touch. The pain in Harry's scar intensified to blinding levels, but he maintained contact, realizing that whatever protection his mother's sacrifice had given him was Quirrell's weakness. Quirrell thrashed and writhed, trying to throw Harry off, but Harry clung desperately, ignoring the excruciating pain. His consciousness began to fade as Voldemort's enraged screams echoed around him. His last sensation was of falling, the stone still clutched in his hand, and a swirl of color and sound before darkness claimed him. Harry woke to blinding white light and a familiar scent of healing potions. The hospital wing gradually came into focus, along with Albus Dumbledore sitting beside his bed. "Good afternoon, Harry," the headmaster said gently. Memory flooded back. Quirrell, the mirror, Voldemort's face. "Sir! The stone!" Quirrell was, "Calm yourself, dear boy," Dumbledore soothed. "Quirrell does not have the stone." "Then who does?" "Nicholas Flamel and I have had a little chat and agreed it's best destroyed." "Destroyed?" Harry repeated, sitting up despite his pounding head. "But won't Flamel die?" Dumbledore smiled. "He has enough elixir stored to set his affairs in order." "But yes, he will die. To one as young as you, I'm sure it seems incredible, but to Nicholas, it's like going to bed after a very, very long day." Harry absorbed this, then asked the question burning in his mind. "Voldemort's still out there, isn't he? Still alive?" "Yes," Dumbledore confirmed gravely. "Without the stone, he cannot return to full power, but he will seek other ways. Not being truly alive, he cannot be truly killed. And he'll keep coming back? Keep trying to return?" "I fear so, Harry. But each time he fails, it diminishes him further. Your continued existence ensures that hope remains. Harry frowned at this strange phrasing. What do you mean, my existence? Dumbledore hesitated. There are connections between you and Voldemort that even I don't fully understand. The scar he left marks you as his equal in some ways. His equal? Harry repeated incredulously. I'm 11. Age is no measure of power or destiny, Dumbledore said cryptically. But perhaps this discussion should wait for when you're older. Harry recognized the deflection technique. Andromeda used similar ones when topics veered into territory she deemed too advanced. But unlike with Andromeda, Harry felt Dumbledore was concealing crucial information rather than merely postponing it. Sir, Harry said carefully, there's something else. When Quirrell touched me, he couldn't bear it. Why? Dumbledore's eyes softened. Your mother died to save you, Harry. If there is one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love. That kind of sacrificial love leaves a mark, not a scar, nothing visible. To be loved so deeply provides protection that lives in your very skin. Quirrell, sharing his soul with Voldemort and full of hatred and greed, could not touch something so pure without suffering. The explanation rang true, yet Harry sensed there was more, something about his connection to Voldemort that Dumbledore wasn't sharing. Before he could press further, the hospital wing doors opened to admit Andromeda, Alice, and Hermione. The women rushed to his bedside, relief evident on their faces. Harry! Andromeda embraced him carefully. Thank Merlin you're awake. We've been so worried. Alice added, squeezing his hand. Neville's just outside with Ron. Madame Pomfrey wouldn't allow more than 3 visitors. Dumbledore rose. I shall take my leave. There is a rather spectacular end-of-year feast beginning shortly that I should attend. He nodded to Andromeda and Alice. Ladies, I trust we'll speak again soon. After he left, Hermione launched into a detailed account of what had happened after Harry entered the final chamber. Neville and I got Ron out using the brooms, then ran straight into Professor Dumbledore in the entrance hall. He already knew, just said Harry's gone after him, hasn't he, and rushed off. How long have I been here? Harry asked, noticing the mountain of sweets and cards on his nightstand. 3 days, Andromeda replied grimly. We arrived within hours of receiving Neville's message, but you were already unconscious. The whole school knows something happened, Hermione added. The story got rather distorted though. Some people think you and Quirrell dueled to the death. Not far from the truth, Harry muttered. What actually happened, Harry? Alice asked gently. After you went through the flames? Harry recounted everything, finding Snape, Quirrell's arrival, their duel, and finally his confrontation with Voldemort. When he described the face on the back of Quirrell's head, Andromeda paled visibly. Possession, she whispered, exchanging a significant look with Alice. Advanced dark magic. He must have been so weakened to resort to that. But he'll try again, Harry concluded. Dumbledore practically confirmed it. Yes, Alice agreed solemnly. This was just the beginning. Did Dumbledore explain why Quirrell couldn't touch you? Andromeda asked. Harry nodded. He said my mother's sacrifice protected me, that love left a mark Voldemort couldn't understand or withstand. That's partially accurate, Andromeda said carefully. Blood protection is ancient magic, rarely seen these days. But it's also why we were able to take custody of you. As a black, however distantly, I could maintain and reinforce that protection. There's more to it, isn't there? Harry asked perceptively. Something Dumbledore isn't telling me. The adults exchanged another loaded glance before Alice nodded slightly. There is, Andromeda confirmed. But now isn't the time, Harry. You need to recover first. When we return home for summer, we'll explain everything we know, which, I should add, isn't everything. Some pieces are still missing. Harry accepted this, knowing their promise of future disclosure was genuine, unlike Dumbledore's vague deflections. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: how Neville had demonstrated extraordinary courage throughout the ordeal, Ron's strategic brilliance in the chess game, and Hermione's cool logic solving Snape's puzzle. Gryffindor seriously behind in the House Cup. Hermione mentioned. We lost so many points with the dragon incident. Speaking of which, Alice said sternly, we'll be discussing that particular adventure at length once you're home. Harry grimaced. Despite facing Voldemort himself, he still wasn't exempt from parental discipline. Later, after Madame Pomfrey finally allowed Neville and Ron to visit briefly, Harry found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. His first year at Hogwarts had been nothing like he'd imagined, yet somehow exactly what Andromeda and Alice had prepared him for. They had trained him to face dangers, to think critically, to value friendship and courage above rules when necessary. Without that preparation, he might not have survived Voldemort's return attempt. As he drifted back to sleep, Harry realized something important. Whatever connection existed between him and Voldemort, whatever destiny Dumbledore hinted at, he wouldn't face it alone. He had a family, not by blood, but by choice, and friends who would stand beside him through whatever came next. The road ahead might be dangerous, but for the first time in days, Harry slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that he was ready for whatever came next. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.